Hey, you look nice today. Welcome to the Juicecast. This is a comfy gaming podcast where we analyze and give our subjective viewpoints on every aspect of a game. It can be a lot of fun seeing what we do or don't agree on and how that might fit into the normative view. It's like a big celebration of gaming. We hit various topics such as the development, artwork, music, multiple gameplay topics, and of course, story and characters. But make sure you stick around till the end for a bonus topic too. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I enjoy you taking the time to listen. Thank you so much. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Juicecast. Today we'll be talking about Sonic Frontiers, and I have with me Pariah, a new guest on the show, and Rakanai, a returning member. So, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello everybody, I'm Pariah695. I'm a YouTuber. I make videos about really in-depth gameplay and story breakdowns of video games, and I have made many videos about Sonic the Hedgehog because I have an unhealthy obsession with this franchise.
Hi, I'm Rakanai. I'm a Twitch streamer. I focus mainly on Star Fox stuff, but I do like to dabble in Sonic every now and then.
Indeed. So, Rakanai has been on for Final Fantasy II before, and now this is a big shift over to Sonic Frontiers, which is a game that was, highly anticipated. I think there was a lot of thoughts going into that game, or a lot of thoughts and feelings up to the release. But before we start getting into that, let's get into our personal histories in the Sonic franchise. I guess I'll start off with that one. I got introduced to the Sonic franchise in Sonic Adventure. Well, Sonic Adventure DX, actually, for the GameCube. I really enjoyed the game for the most part. I was, I played the hell out of it, being a child. Then I saw, in the Sonic Adventure DX cover, there was this little paper, and it advertised Sonic Adventure 2, and I was like, oh my god, that dude Shadow, he looks so cool. And then I started looking stuff up on Google about him, and got into SA2, then played the classics on Sonic Adventure DX, and got Sonic Mega Collection Plus, and from there, I kind of played Hero, Shadow the Hedgehog, and, here we are now. I've talked about Sonic a lot. Obviously, we've done podcasts on Sonic Adventure up to Sonic 06, which is a really long one. Definitely go check all those out if you want. This should be in the description below. And, we landed here with Sonic Frontiers, and I have a lot of thoughts on this game, as I'm pretty sure most people do, because it's a lot, this game. How about you guys?
For me, Sonic 3, I believe, was actually the very first video game I ever played when I was 4 years old, I think. And I've basically been obsessed ever since then. I've played every single Sonic game way too much, and I've spent way too much time thinking about this series and researching it. I know almost everything there is to know about this series. I have a problem.
You've played every single Sonic game?
I have.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot of Sonic games out there. You got the Neo Geo Pocket Sonic the Hedgehog?
Yep, I have played that multiple times.
All right. Props to you for playing all those. Jeez Louise. How about you, Rakanai?
Play Sonic Chronicles. Oh, I feel bad for you.
I did play that.
So my first Sonic game was actually Sonic 2. I played it at a friend's house when I was younger. But I didn't actually get my first Sonic game until I got a GameCube because I had an N64 in my house before that time. So SA2B was essentially my first Sonic game, and after that, everything just took off. I got all the Mega Collection, the Gems Collection, here, pretty much from there on, I picked up every Sonic game that it came out, and I've played all the mainline ones, plus a few of the off ones at this point.
Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
But yeah, I've played a couple of the off ones, like the Sonic Advance series, Sonic Rivals, and those ones have been pretty good to me. The only sore spot for me as far as Sonic goes is Sonic Unleashed. So as long as we don't spend too much time on that, I think we'll be good.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a very polarizing game, and it's one that I haven't even gotten around to yet, which is, many people hearing that are probably going to be like, what? You're talking about Sonic and you haven't played Sonic Unleashed? First of all, we'll get there. We'll stream it. I know a lot about it still, but, I haven't played it yet because I just never owned it as a kid on Xbox 360. But, yeah, that's a actually pretty polarizing opinion to not like Unleashed these days. And, I mean, honestly, the game has a lot of polarizing things in its gameplay to separate those groups, so I can understand that. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, we won't spend too much time on that. It might come up honestly when we talk about the random gameplay styles, but okay. This might be a tough question. What's everyone's favorite Sonic game? If you had to say whatever your heart says, just so we know where we're coming from and what our tastes are.
Sonic Advance 3 for me, definitively.
Okay,
it's a good one. Probably Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Okay, and SA2 for me. So that's that. And if you want to see my opinions on those, then you can look at the podcast for it. It's very long, because that one's a super polarizing one too. So yeah, what I was gonna say before, when I interrupted you, Rakanai, was that I think we're all around the same age. I could be wrong on this, but I think that Sega did a really good job because giving as many avenues as possible for playing these Sonic games in the early 2000s. I think that was kind of their goal after Sonic Adventure came to the GameCube, right? Because I didn't grow up with any Sega console. I didn't have a Genesis, I didn't have a Dreamcast, I didn't have a Saturn. I was like a Nintendo PlayStation person, But, as soon as Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Adventure DX came to GameCube, they gave all the Game Gear games on SADX. They put out multiple collections. Then they started putting out more games on Game Boy Advance, and they pretty much put these collections on every single console so that if you were to be introduced to the series, like I was through the 3D entries, you would have no problem getting your hands on all of the other 2D entries. Bar, Knuckles Chaotix or whatever, So
yeah, they knew what they were doing at that time because that was right when they were switching from working on their own Sega consoles to now being multi-platform. So they're like, there's going to be a bunch of people that have never played Sonic games before, so let's catch them up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they did a great job with that, honestly. I think Sonic Mega Collection Plus is still like probably the best 2D collection out there for Sonic games. I mean, some people may say Sonic Origins because it has some extras, but that game's launch was really not great. They did good for it with some of it, though, so I'll give them credit for that. I know the development for that was also rushed because, of course it was. Go figure. Do you see the company that we're looking at? Do you see the industry that we're in? So, yeah.
Rushed games in this day and age?
Yeah, in all day and ages. I mean, Sega has never not had a rushed game when it comes to Sonic. I honestly don't think so. Was there one? Was there a single one that the development wasn't like just an absolute
Sonic
shit show?
1?
Maybe.
Sonic 1 may have not been rushed.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, so speaking of which, because now this kind of leads into our next topic, what were our feelings leading up to the release of Sonic Frontiers? Because I remember mine. I remember my feelings leading up to Sonic Frontiers, and it was that this game looks to be a dumpster fire. Those were my feelings when I was looking at it. I mean, I remember the first trailer for it was just like, what are you showing me? You're not showing me anything about what this game has to offer. All that I see is like a bunch of pop-in. I don't even know if it showed as much as that. I think the first trailer was like walking around and picking stuff up on top of a tower and, climbing one of the towers. And to me, obviously, it just seems like, well, the game takes a lot of inspiration from Breath of the Wild and other open world games, of course.
What?
What? So yeah, so for me, I was just like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I see a lot of lack of polish. I don't think the graphics look great for a modern game. I still hold that opinion. I don't think that the pop-in is acceptable. Oh, you know what it was? I think it was the fact that and I still am jaded when it comes to this, when it comes to Sonic Team. I'm a little less so, actually, after playing Sonic Frontiers, which we'll get into, obviously, with what the game had to offer. But it was the fact that we had waited forever, and obviously there was a pandemic going on, and we were looking forward to, like, I forget exactly the game show that Sega shows up at, but it was the first Frontiers trailer ever. Oh yeah, that's what it was. It was just Sonic running through. It was a CG thing of Sonic running through grass, and that was after the last presentation got canceled, so everyone was anticipating this thing. We got Sonic Origins and Sonic running through grass with some weird techie stuff, and then the next time the game was shown, which was a while out, was not great either. And then we got shown gameplay, and we saw, like, the pop-in and everything else, and we weren't sure what the heck was going on with the game. It wasn't until, like, much later, when people actually started playing the game, that we were like, oh, okay, this is a product. You know, this is... We can now kind of put the pieces together as to what this is. But it was a 5-year development cycle, you know what I mean? We were waiting a long time, and what they were showing us up to the release made me feel like I shouldn't buy this. But that I did anyway for streaming and whatnot. So yeah, those are my feelings. I've been talking for a while. Anyone else can hop in.
Yeah, I don't know what their marketing people were thinking with how they approached Sonic Frontiers. I hope they were fired, because that did not go very well.
Right.
For me, in the early stages of Frontiers, I was just kind of like, okay, what's the game? You know, we have that CG trailer, and at this point, just in general with games, I just don't care about CG trailers anymore. Show me the game. And then they finally showed us the game, and it's just walking around. It's like, that's not what I meant. I mean, show me the game. What are you actually doing in this game? What's the gameplay? And it was only in, like, the last month or two leading up to the game that I actually started to understand what the game is going to be to a degree. And, like, the more they showed of the game over time, kind of the worse it started to look. And then I started to see a lot of it, and I was like, okay, it's kind of looking okay. And then I saw even more, and then I was like, okay, now it's looking bad again. And so by the end of it, I was just at a point of, like, kind of clenching, like, with one eye open, just going like, I hope it's good.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Totally.
I had a very similar experience, because I remember when they did those IGN spots. That was, like, when I really started looking into the game. I'd seen the trailers that they'd put out, but wasn't really impressed at that point. And as soon as IGN came out with that 1 month of releases for the game, I was like, all right, this is an absolute crapshoot. What the heck is Sega doing? But I think it was September or October, somewhere around that time, they released a couple more videos, and the game looked so much more polished that I was like, all right, I'm gonna give it a chance. And I did. I enjoyed myself. So
good. Yeah, I think another thing that was really bugging me up until the release of Sonic Frontiers, and even, like, after... Oh, you know, it was when reviewers started playing it, and, you know, people were sent review codes and stuff, and... Mm-hmm. I mean, this is part of the reason why I left Twitter, too. I was seeing a lot of bullshit from people in the Sonic community, which is a very, very big community, and this is to be expected, but people are so, like, immaturely attached to the things that they value that they feel attacked when any normative criticism is thrown toward that thing. And
I don't know what you're talking about. That never happens with Sonic.
Yeah, of course not. And, like, fine. I think that the way that you should word things should, you know, at the end of the day, all things are subjective, but a lot of those subjective opinions form into what is called normativity, right? Like, what we value as a collective. That's how reviews are made. You know, you can't... Of course, like, we can... Like, one person can value something else, and that's whatever. It's just how humans work. That's how we know... That's, like, how communication works. It's how we know what is good and what is bad, subjectively, whatever. But you can't... You can't, like, take what you subjectively value and then put it out there and defend it against, like, any sort of criticism. And I was seeing this a lot on Twitter, and I saw a lot of reviewers get attacked for talking about the bugs and lack of polish in the game. And that was ridiculous. You know, that was one of the worst things ever. And I see it more in the Sonic community than probably any other video game community. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because it's a younger audience or something. Maybe that's just my experience, but the Pokemon
it's definitely a thing with Sonic, because like it happened with the second Sonic movie as well. Anytime people criticize that, they were getting blasted by a bunch of people. There's definitely a thing with Sonic in particular where people feel very attacked when someone says, "I don't like the thing that you like."
Yeah, it's like with Sonic and Pokemon for some reason are like the two things that I see it happen the most with. And it's just really unfortunate, and I think that just added on to how jaded I was feeling about the franchise at the time. I was just like, man, you can't attack people over not agreeing with you and defend this franchise with the mistakes that they are making, and then, like, because they're just going to keep on making those mistakes, you know what I mean? You can't just shut down legitimate criticism for a game because you don't agree, because then the actual developers aren't going to see that. They're not, you know, there's no incentive to improve, etc., etc. So yeah, that's another thing that I guess I wanted to bring up, and I almost forgot about it, but when it was happening, I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to bring this up in the podcast like a year from now. So
yeah. It's definitely a problem. Because a lot of, it's fine to have like a disagreement with someone about your opinion of something, and then that can lead to discussion and all that. That's fine.
Of course.
But oftentimes it's just like people getting upset and just yelling at each other, and that's not productive for anything at all. And it's awful. And it's happened way too much in the Sonic community, especially recently.
Yeah, there's just not enough productive conversation because people who have conflicting values aren't communicating them accurately, and it's usually, and I've seen a lot of it, it's usually like on the toxic positivity side of things, which is actually kind of strange to me. But yeah, so you have any thoughts on that, Rakanai? Have you seen that kind of stuff?
I don't go on Twitter very much, so I kind of not see a lot of that.
You're better off for it.
Yeah, but like I get it. Like when people like love a thing, they can't really like see it for its fault at times, and they have a hard time doing that. So I can imagine a lot of people out there just having problems with that. I myself do at times with certain games, but this is definitely not one of the series that that I can do that with.
It's just like
has made so many mistakes over the years.
Yeah, and to me it's like you can love a thing and still understand that it has normative faults, like things that most people don't value, and for good reason, you know? Like my favorite games ever all have their flaws, you know? Except for Mother 3, that's a perfect game.
Okay.
Are we starting something?
We'll talk after.
But yeah, so that's all I have to say about like the pre-release of the game. I guess we can start, actually getting into the gameplay of the game, because this is where, actually, I don't know, I would say there's probably a lot of equal discussion on both the gameplay and the story segments of this, but there's more things to talk about with the gameplay, I think. So we'll start off talking about the open zones, or like, what were your first impressions, like, coming out of the cyberspace level and being introduced to the world of Sonic Frontiers?
For me, the early parts of the game was kind of just like feeling it out, of like seeing what the game is and how it works, what's the loop that I'm going to be doing. And very quickly you start to kind of get the feel of it. That like very beginning area kind of is like giving you all the things of like, you do a puzzle and that fills out your map, you fight the guy, you get a gear, you go into the shrine thing. That's not a shrine because it's not Breath of the Wild, we swear. You do a cyberspace level, and then it opens up into the more of the open world. And I think that it generally, the ideas there of what they're doing with the open zone, it works. The execution could be done better in various aspects, I think. But the formula, I think it's definitely got some merits to it. I see potential in it.
Yeah, for me it was like I streamed the entire game, so there might have been things that I didn't get my first time through, where I was like, that I looked back on the stream later and I was like, oh, okay, that's what the game was trying to teach me there. Because when you're streaming, you're paying attention to so many goddamn things at once, it can be a little distracting to to understand exactly what the game is trying to say, at least in my experience. But yeah, after I first of all, the actual first cyberspace level didn't leave me with any good impressions at all. But once I left it, you know, you hear that big voice in the sky, you are the key, blah blah blah, and you start running through. I messed around with the control settings a bit, because you can actually do that in this game, which is cool. And then I started running around, and obviously, like, the game does a pretty good job of teaching you the loop right off the bat, but yeah. I didn't get it until I was way further down in the game. Like, it wasn't built into my brain yet. It wasn't built into my intuition, like, oh yes, do this and then this and then this and then this, like it was the back of my hand, until much later. You know what I mean? Because I think it tries to teach you a lot at once, and it interrupts a lot of the processing that my brain is trying to do by throwing up all of the prompts on screen after doing something or right before doing something, which might be necessary for some, and I totally get that. But there's a lot of it where I just want to be, okay, shut up. Like, let me do the thing. You know what I mean? I don't know if that was just me.
It definitely does dump a lot on you. I think they want to get you to the game very quickly.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Rakanai?
Yeah, I had a very similar experience to Pariah. The first little island area, I just spent time feeling it out. I turned off the tutorials, like, immediately, though, which was a big mistake, which I'll get to later. Because, like, during the loading screens, I didn't want to play around. I wanted to talk to my chat, and then having to hold a button to finish playing around to get through the loading screen annoyed the hell out of me. So I just turned those off immediately. But when I got out into the open zone, I had a lot more fun. I had a big issue with the first level in cyberspace. It didn't feel good. It really worried me to start. But then when I started getting around into the open world, there were a lot of fun areas to just mess around with. Lots of fun little mini challenges to either unlock the map, collect the medals. Lots of good stuff like that. The only problem I had with it is just it didn't feel cohesive at all. It was just set pieces in a big open world that didn't really flow.
In the open zones as a whole, or just like the tutorial? Okay.
In the open zones as a whole, that didn't change throughout the entirety of the game for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was until the second area that I really started to get the gameplay loop.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think the way that the game tries to teach you things is interesting. I think I was intrigued a lot by the various things that you could do just even in that first, like, tunnel, that closed off section that you start off in, because you see things off to the left and to the right and you want to interact with those things. But the game has not taught me the controls yet, so, like, I didn't even know how to light dash or do anything like that. You get taught that in a random training screen, I think. Now, you said you turned off the tutorials. Does that also turn off the UI tutorials in the open zone, or just the, like, white void dummy practice things in between levels?
It was just the white void dummy thing that I turned off.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can turn them off in the open world. You probably can, but I didn't look into it that far.
Okay. So, starting off, I was kind of like, all right, like, it gives you the psi loop. Oh yeah, and then you hop into combat, right? It gives you the psi loop, and it's like, all right, circle these 3 torches, push this statue. I was like, really? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just trying to teach you that you can interact with objects at all. So it's teaching you to experiment with things, but are there any moments in the game where you ever have to push a statue again, other than the puzzle to leave the first island? I can't even remember.
I think there might have been in one of the underground Knuckles areas, like when you're trying to get to a different part of the island. I don't remember other than that though. I could be 100% wrong.
I do think the point of that was really just to be a tutorial that you use the Psyloop as basically like your interact button. That's how you interact with lots of stuff throughout the game.
Yeah, you learn pretty quickly that Psyloop is pretty much the answer to almost every single thing. But the pushing of the statue is, like, specifically, I guess, what I was honing in on there, because, I mean, if there is another example like Rakanai said, then okay, so
I guess it's used in the laser puzzle.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. But in that section, you hit that you're going to do it, and that, or like you hit X that you're going to do it, and then it brings you to a new screen where that's your only option. It's not like you explore the island and any of the other puzzles are pushing a statue. Like it never grows on that, or like that idea never grows, other than that one puzzle at the end of the island. I'm pretty sure. So I mean, I was like, whatever. Maybe there'll be more interesting push puzzles later. I think they're a little out of place, and that they would break the pace, but whatever. But it just never did, you know. The circling things with the Psyloop did it all over the place, of course.
Yeah.
That was like the biggest one. I was just surprised that there weren't any more push. I mean, I'm actually kind of glad that there weren't, but it did surprise me because I don't know why that would be one of the first things that you do in the game. But
honestly, that didn't even really stick out to me very much. You just do it for like 5 seconds and then it's gone, and it was out of my brain.
Yeah. It was pretty forgettable for me. I was like, all right, I can just do stuff. All right, like any other game.
This is the first time I'm thinking about it. I wasn't thinking about it at all in the game. It just, like, thinking back on it, I'm like, okay, why didn't they do anything else with that? Because all of the other puzzles repeat. That's like the one that doesn't. So I just figured I'd bring it up. So yeah. Okay. And then as far as the open zones go in general, I think the first and second island were probably fine. I think the third one, I can't even remember the name of it, the volcanic ash one.
Chaos Island, I believe.
Yeah, Chaos Island was probably my least favorite. But as far as these things go as a whole, it's kind of hard because they're hard to break down. I think that the most fun part for me in this entire game was the open zones. It was running around. There's a new thing around the corner, no matter where you go, for the most part, whether it's another collectible, one of these... You know what? I'm going to stop talking. Let's break down the actual gameplay loop of exploring the open zones. I think that would probably be the best thing to do. So, the game teaches you have to hit these question mark signs, which apparently Sonic can see, and it's not just for the player, they're just there. I've always found it funny when Sonic games kind of like acknowledge the fact that they're a game. There's actually more fourth wall breaking than you'd think. Like the fact that Sonic can see those signs that he fishes for and whatnot, or like he brings it up in a cutscene, but anyway. Yeah, so you hit these question marks that fill out the map. On the map, you can see locations to either talk to your friends, which you need memory tokens for. You collect those memory tokens by interacting with the level's small platforming challenges, which for the most part I had fun with. During the game, you'll come across enemies throughout the entire open zone, including mini-boss encounters. Those mini-boss encounters will get you gears. You use said gears to enter Cyberspace, which you get vault keys, up to 4 per Cyberspace level. Those vault keys will unlock Chaos Emerald vaults, right? Chaos something, you know, whatever they're called. The things that hold the Chaos Emeralds.
You get Chaos Emeralds.
Yes, and you need 6 Chaos Emeralds to fight that island's main boss. You'll also get collectibles called skill points from beating enemies, big fishing coins, attack, defense, and speed/HP power-ups. Oh no, is that another power-up, or is it just the red and blue ones? I don't even remember at this point. Which you can use by talking to the Elder Cocos to level up your stats for combat and speed for exploration, I believe. So that's the gameplay loop for the open zones as a whole. From there, I guess we can break things out. I just wanted to get that out of the way so that it's cohesive for those listening as well. So yeah, what did you guys think about at least like exploring the open zone and collecting the things you needed to collect to get to the next area?
Yeah, it's a very convoluted setup. It's a lot of get the thing to get the thing to get the thing. But I think that it works for the most part in terms of motivating the player to interact with all the stuff in the open world. Like, I was constantly just looking around for memory tokens just anywhere I could whenever I was moving to any location and grabbing any ones I could grab on the way. And that was always a fun experience, doing the platforming challenges or trying to cheat them with like slope jumps and stuff, which was really enjoyable. Everything else it works as like just side stuff to keep an eye out. The things to upgrade your points, the cocos that are just thrown all around the place, the purple coins for fishing. It's all just stuff that it's fun to move around in this game and just navigate the 3D space. So having just a bunch of stuff to get, I thought that worked really well. And it all leading to the cyberspace levels. I really enjoyed the cyberspace levels. So it all kind of funneling to that. I thought that was a pretty good loop that worked, and then it just leads to getting the Chaos Emeralds, which then completes the island. Like, I thought all of that was pretty fine in terms of like the structure of the system.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Rakanai?
Yeah, the gameplay loop, at least for the open zones, was fantastic. I enjoyed all the little mini puzzles. I enjoyed being able to interact with the characters throughout the world in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Even uncovering the map was a lot of fun, even if it was a bit jank. Which I'm sure we'll get to later here in a bit. But I think the worst part of the gameplay loop, which kind of stuck with me after the first island, was the bosses. I felt like they were pretty uninspired, and I'm just gonna go into my experience with the first boss. It was awful.
You mean like Ashura?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, not I'm talking about like the first like boss of the island, like
the main bosses.
Oh, like the supersonic boss?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I went in there, didn't have any rings. I was like, all right, whatever. It's a boss arena. I'll probably find some around. There weren't. I didn't know about the little loop trick that you could do a circle to get rings yet. So I climb up the Titan. I get the last Chaos Emerald to transform into
But you just die immediately?
You get 100 rings, and that's it.
Okay.
So you have a very limited amount of time to beat this thing. At this point, because I turned off tutorials, the game had not taught me how to parry.
Oh, okay.
So I struggled on this boss for probably an hour until someone came into my chat and was like, you can parry the thing, right? And I had no idea because the game hadn't taught it to me out in the open world.
Yeah.
Something, a bit of an oversight, I think. And that kind of laid my distaste for the boss fights pretty much for the rest of the entire game.
Yeah, I don't think the game really tries to teach you the mechanics outside of the tutorials, at least when it comes to things that Sonic can do, unless you go into the skill point menu. But stuff like the parry isn't there, the light dash isn't there, which I didn't know it would be like clicking in the left stick, because I'm not used to that. I was actually trying to sit there and figure out and experiment like in the open world while I was doing it. It's like, oh shit, I can't get this because I literally don't know how to do this, and it just felt bad, It didn't feel great to me. It wasn't until later that because I kept the tutorials on the whole time. At some point, I should have turned them off once I learned everything because they were just annoying. But I could do stuff like that. I think that eventually you do. I think you have to learn how to parry by the second island because, well, first of all, you have to beat the boss, but the game doesn't teach you that you have to until you hit one of those challenges, which I guess you can completely avoid if you really want to, as well, where you have to hold both of the buttons as the ball comes to you, so you hit it back.
Yeah, I hadn't run into one of those yet.
I
They
don't
should have
think.
put one of those in the beginning island, like somewhere early on, to teach parrying more naturally.
Yeah, totally.
Agreed.
'Cause I don't think they. I don't think one is actually in the first island. I could be wrong on that,
I
but
don't think so.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember one.
yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's
Don't turn off tutorials, kids.
Yep. I was like, well, if it's just combos and stuff, I'm gonna figure that out on my own. I didn't even occur to me to think that Sonic would have a parry function.
And you need it for the bosses. You need them for every single supersonic boss. I'm pretty sure too. So, yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, you're right. The game doesn't really teach you a lot of stuff. It doesn't teach you. Okay, I don't want to say everything because it does try to teach you some platforming stuff in the tutorials, but also it tries to teach you those platforming things through experimentation in the open world because there's so many variants of those things. That eventually you're probably going to figure it out, like hold this button and run to wall run. I can't remember exactly. There are so many things that like it gives you that I can't comprehend all of them. Like I couldn't learn all of them at once. Like even in the open world, like I cannot remember if in the open world it teaches you how to wall run or if it's just in the tutorials. You know, I know it doesn't teach you how to light dash. So yeah.
With wall running, I remember it being taught to me the first time I tried to go up a tower.
Oh yeah, you know what? You're right. Yeah.
As soon as I got to like one of those like special walls that you could run up, it was like, hey, if you do this, you can do this.
Yeah.
I think in the early part of the game, when it is tutorializing so much, there's like so many menus popping up telling you do this to do that and whatever, that at a certain point you just like stop paying attention to it, so it's easy to miss or forget stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wish there was more that taught you how to do things naturally, that kind of kept you in a more enclosed area for a little bit longer to naturally teach you all of the mechanics of the game. Because there's so much, right? You have another 4 islands. Why couldn't this one just be a little bit more tutorialized in a natural way instead of throwing the information at you all at once? That seems a little weird to me, and it definitely annoyed me while I was playing the game. But as far as
this was like actually thinking on it now, like a lot of the stuff that they teach you in this game is very much tell, don't show, which is not the way that I would have done a lot of this stuff. If like, say for combat, like you start getting into combat, you start fighting an enemy, you're not doing very well. Give us like a small little cutscene showing, hey, you can do this little thing. And then give us like a small little text explanation. But instead it's just pop-up after pop-up after pop-up. Like just a bunch of reading to do. So yeah, like Pariah said, you can kind of start tuning it out eventually because it's like, oh god, I don't want to read this. I just want to fight.
Yeah, you just check out. And I think that they could have done a good job of trying to balance those two things by teaching you things more naturally over time, by showing you things throughout the first island. And then also told you the exact things to do in the tutorials if you left them on. You know, like you can have both of those things. Why have it the way that it is? I don't know. I mean, it was their first time, of course, making a game like this, so maybe they just didn't know how to tackle it. But yeah. But as far as the actual gameplay loop of the islands go, once I got it, I thought it was a lot of fun. I think it was the most fun that I've had in a Sonic game in a while. So, especially with, like Pariah said, cheating a lot of things too. There were times where I didn't understand what the game even wanted me to do, until I realized that Psyloop is the cheat, like the answer to everything, basically. Like I remember there was one time in Ares Island where it wants you to get on top of a building, and this might seem obvious to other people, because I kind of felt stupid afterwards. Where you know that big like drain thing that you have to do for the story? Yeah. There's that big weight, and I guess that I had gone into the water before, and then I had gotten out of it before it was even drained, and I was like, oh, I don't know what this wall thing is here for. I guess what you needed to do is hop down there after you drain it and then climb up that wall, and then it like leads to some rails to put you on top of that weight, which then puts you on top of that building to go into the next level, which I needed to do. I didn't know that. I didn't go back over there, or I just like didn't see that path. So instead there was like a rail next to that building, and if you jump off of it, and well, you boost, and then you jump off of it at a perfect time, and then do another double jump, and then you boost left, you can get onto it, and then you like hit a button, and then it activates a spring down there. I was like, there's no way that's the way that the game wanted me to do it. And then I saw what you had to do later, and I was like, oh my god. But I still felt good that I could do it, you know? I think the game largely does encourage a lot of stuff like that. Just with the movement of the character in general. So, did you guys have any moments like that where you kind of just... I mean, there were a lot throughout the challenges that I kind of just like, oh, I'm going into some random direction, and I'm slope jumping, and I'm picking up one of the memory tokens without actually going through the challenge, so... Yippee,
oh, yeah.
But...
I totally ran into a bunch of stuff like that, too. Like, there's the ice mountain, where you're like... There's supposed to be ways to get up it, because you slide down the ice, but you can kind of just, like, derp Skyrim your way up the icy mountain sometimes if you just go at it hard enough. Or there's the like big pyramid structure on I think the last island that there is a way that you're supposed to get up there, but you can just like run up one of the corners and do slope jumps to just like skip a bunch of stuff. Did a lot of stuff like that throughout the game. It felt very SA1, where there's a whole bunch of level design here you're supposed to do, but if you just get on this corner and you do a Spindash jump, or in this game's case, a boost jump, then you can just skip all of it, and it feels really cool and clever, and it's very fun.
Yeah, I highly agree with that. And to bring up the ice mountain, yeah, you just jump and boost at it like 7,000 times, and eventually you'll get up it. That's what I did. I
did the same thing. I couldn't figure out how to get up otherwise. I was like, all right, just Skyrim in this.
Yeah.
And then you get to the top and you see like, oh, that's how I was supposed to get up here.
Yeah. It's super funny. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It definitely felt a lot like SA1. And this is something I brought up in the Shadow the Hedgehog video, because I talked about how much it didn't feel like Sonic Adventure 1, or like Sonic in general, the things that I think of when I think about Sonic, which is using my character's abilities to, in like environment around me, to jump or move to places that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. And Shadow the Hedgehog doesn't really... It has like a few moments like that, really, but...
Yeah, but it's very rare.
Yeah, it's super rare. And like, for example, instead of doing that, you have this freaking hold X button to go through a path of dark goo to get places. And I'm just like, damn, let me like slope jump to get onto that thing instead of having to use this pool of whatever and hold a button. You know what I mean? It's like, it's stuff like that I'll definitely praise Sonic Frontiers for doing, or like getting back to that formula, because that's how classic Sonic was, you know? And Sonic Adventure was an evolution of classic Sonic, using your movement, using the abilities that the character has to your advantage, really learning your environment and being able to conquer it, I guess. So Sonic Frontiers has a lot of that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, though personally, I felt that it could have done a lot more with that stuff and leaned even more into it, because something that I felt a lot about the open zones, and a lot of people have been saying this, is that there's a very clear separation between like the open world stuff and the platforming stuff. Because when you're just running around on the ground, it's just like flat, plain, boring, nothing. And then up in the sky is a bunch of floating platforms and rails, and that's where all the platforming sequences are that you complete, and then you get the memory tokens, and they feel very separated. It feels like almost like a theme park, like here's the entrance to the ride, and that's the short little platforming sequence you do, and then you get off the ride and you go back to walking around to get to the next one. And again, you can like, you know, cheat stuff to like jump from one to the other to do a bunch of shortcut stuff, and that's cool. But in the actual design of it, it feels like they could have done a better job of marrying like the terrain of the open world with the platforming, and I think that probably would have been a lot better.
You know what? That's probably the best way I've ever heard it be put. Like, that it's an amusement park, and like each one of these things is kind of like a ride. Even the levels themselves kind of feel like that, right?
Yeah.
Like that you have to go into. That's a good metaphor. No, I agree. I agree. It definitely could have married the two concepts better because I just wanted more of that. Anytime I did something like that, I felt like I'm cool. I'm playing a Sonic game now. It wasn't when I was solving the puzzles that I felt like smart. Like Zelda, you feel smart for completing these puzzles in the way that you want to, and then in this game, it's like we're just putting puzzles around. You know, we're just putting these things around, and you can't. There's like one way that we kind of want you to do them. You feel your best in Sonic when you're tackling things the way that you want to. Like, you're given actual agency. Do you have any thoughts on that, Rakanai?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from Kronos Island, personally, for me. Because all those challenges were 2D. Like, that was kind of the theme of that island.
The Chaos Island? The volcano?
Yeah.
Yeah,
was that Chaos Island?
I think it's... I think we established it's Chaos Island.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, like all the challenges were 2D, and a lot of them were very just linear, worked very well until you discovered that you can do 3D and 2D with them by getting on the challenges in the wrong spot, and the challenges became 3D.
They break.
Yep, they break.
Yeah.
Which, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that was really weird, the inclusion of 2D in the open zone, because, yeah, if you just avoid the trigger, then you just won't go into 2D, and you can still do a lot of them in 3D, but yeah, some of them will break. Like, I got into one that is supposed to be 2D, but I was 3D, and you can't wall jump when you're in 3D mode, so I just couldn't complete it unless I came at it from the normal entrance that I'm supposed to. It's just so weird. And like when you get into those 2D sections, you're like, no, I didn't want to do this. And you like try to like, find a way out. And then sometimes it's a one-way thing and you have to complete the challenge. And you're like, why can't I just move forward and leave?
Yeah, I hate that. When a game is like makes me want to stop doing the thing it keeps on making you do, it's not a good sign, right? Like especially Chaos Island, which actually Pariah, you were in my stream when I streamed that island, like my first time there, and I was like, I was just bitching the entire time about being in the 2D sections and not being able to escape them. And instead of like when you side loop around things now, how you would get like more secrets, this time it's just like hit this trigger so you can go into the 2D area now. Like it would be a boost. I mean, like a boost pad to shoot you into another one that then shoots you in a 2D section. I'm just like, fuck you. I don't want to.
Chaos Island was very weird in its design because you would have those little like question mark points that you would do a side loop around and they'd reveal like a bunch of memory tokens or whatever on the other islands. But then on Chaos Island, it was like a dash panel that would just launch you at another dash panel that was already there. So it's like, why is that there? What? I don't understand.
It's there to like, because you're already conditioned to do that to get the memory tokens, and now this is your way of getting the memory tokens, is by being shot into this 2D section. But imagine you already did the 2D section. It just launches you back into the same one. So it's kind of flawed design.
Oh yeah, that happened to me multiple times.
Yep, same.
Yeah.
I actually, like, with the back on the 2D section, I had problems, like, passing by some of them, and then just entering 2D when I wasn't even on the on the challenge. And like, yeah, that entire island was a broken mess. Like, I can't really think of anything besides Tales of Story to like even like redeem that island.
Yeah, it's silly. Like, it had its moments.
Sorry, you go, Juice.
Oh, I was just gonna say it had its moments. It did have like I remember even in the 2D, like being in there was one challenge that I went into that was a timed challenge, and it broke on me, so I couldn't complete the timer. So I guess I was just gonna say that it's the I mean, they all kind of are the same, so I can't really describe it. But I remember like it had this last section that had you like running on this like toilet bowl section, and then it wanted you to hit. And you have no control. I guess I just hit like the boost panels like too high or something instead of being in the middle, where if you're in the middle, it shoots you into the next boost pad to actually complete the challenge. But for me, it just had me go off of it and then put me like back into 3D, and I had to find it and start all over again. So I couldn't even... So even in some of the 2D sections by themselves, they kind of break, which... I mean, I guess, yeah, that... before I continue on that, go ahead, finish your what you were gonna say.
What I was going to say is my guess would be that most likely Chaos Island was probably made by a different team within Sonic Team. Like they probably split into groups and it's like, you work on Chaos Island, you work on Kronos Island. So that's why they feel different from each other, because you get to Chaos Island and it has stuff like that where before you would get memory tokens for doing those little question marks, and now you're getting springs and dash panels, and there's all these 2D sections when there's not that many of them in the first 2 islands. So that's probably why it feels so weird and different compared to the other islands, would be my guess.
That's entirely possible. I don't know if there's any real way to know, unless they were to come out with an interview or something like that. But
No,
it
it's
wouldn't.
just a guess on my part.
Yeah, because I mean, it is so wildly different than the other two, and in fact, even I mean, the fourth one is kind of just like the towers, and then the fifth one I can't remember really the mix of 3D and 2D, but even still,
It was pretty even in the last one.
Yeah, generally.
So yeah, maybe it was just like a couple like different developers who were more focused on Chaos Island, and then they came and they joined the other team for the last couple of islands or something.
Probably.
Who the hell knows? Yeah.
I tried to rationalize all the 2D sections in that island because it was Tails, and he first showed up in Sonic 2, which was 2D, and that was kind of the theme they might have wanted to go with.
Bruh.
But like, it was such a stretch that it was hard. It was really hard to get through.
I mean, by that same logic, the others would have had the same 2D levels with Knuckles and Amy.
See,
yeah.
there was no like.
You just you reach it so far. Yeah. Like, I want this to be good. I want this to make sense. Okay. How about we get into the combat, I guess, because and this can go into the bosses as well, not the supersonic bosses, but just the bosses in general. What were your thoughts on the combat while you were exploring the open zones?
Personally, personally, I really disliked the combat. I thought it was really, really dull and shallow and boring, and it was very quick into the game that I would completely avoid fighting like just the normal enemies that were around. I would just run right past them, wouldn't even do it, and I would kind of like dread running into the Guardians, I think they're called, the mini bosses on the islands.
Maybe, yeah, that's what they're called.
Like, when I would run into them, I'd be like, ugh, I have to do this to get a gear, and it would just be like going through the motions, not very fun, because there's so little to the combat. You quickly realize that for a lot of the enemies, you can just mash attack on them, and just anytime they're doing an attack startup, just hold the bumpers, and you'll parry whatever they do. And then all the special moves that you unlock throughout the game, they're all the same. Like, they all just do damage. Like, functionally, they don't do anything different from each other. So it's all just arbitrary. You could just do whichever one does the most damage repeatedly, and that's the most efficient way to do combat. So I really, really did not like the combat at all in the game.
Yeah, the only two things in the combat that do something differently are parrying and Psyloop.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Psyloop, I did like that in the combat, like running around enemies to open up their vulnerabilities. That was cool. If the combat was more built around that kind of stuff, like running around and being agile instead of like mashing X to do a bunch of attacks, that would have been cool.
Yeah, I wish the instant Psyloop would be more balanced and that you could use it more. But before I say my full thoughts, go ahead, Rakanai.
I thought the combat at first was kind of fun. I unlocked Sonic Boom pretty early and heavily relied on that for the remainder of the game because it's just, all right, I'm just going to sit here kicking airwaves at you for as long as I'm in the air. You can't really touch me otherwise. So, like, at that point, it just got very, very monotonous. And like I mentioned earlier, the game didn't teach me how to parry because I shut off the tutorials, which, again, don't do. And it made my life a living hell, like, for the first island. But after that, like, it got monotonous. I got into the groove and I was like, all right, I'll fight you once. I'll do your mechanics for the mini bosses. And I don't think like I ever seeked them out after that. Like, I would just run around them afterwards. I was like, all right, I know what you do. I don't care. I've already gotten all the gears and stuff that I need.
Yeah, the thing is like, once you realize the fact that you can get gears faster by fishing than fighting the bosses, if the combat isn't, like, fun enough to incentivize you to actually fight the things to get the gears instead of playing fishing, which is literally just hitting a single button on time, then I think there's a little bit of an issue there. I think that I mean, maybe we can get into that later, but that entire system is broken. So for me, I agree that the combat is mainly monotonous. It took me a while. It took me until the very last island to really understand that Psyloop and parry was the answer to every single thing that I didn't know how to do in the combat. And it really upset me, because I would be trying to fight these the guardians or whatever, and I think it was the caterpillar one that I was trying to figure out, and of course the answer was, oh, just hit it and then instant Psyloop it and it throws it on its back, instead of interacting with any of the things that the boss is doing or trying to figure it out. And it took me like a few tries to even beat that thing because I just didn't know to Psyloop. Some of the earlier enemies, or like some of the other little guardians or whatever, trying to interact with them was kind of a slog, because it would break up the pace of exploring so much that I would never want to do it again. The most egregious example would be Shark in Eris Island.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I you start to fight that thing, and then it puts you into this little sequence where you're holding its tail and you have to like dodge the surroundings. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I was like, okay, this is going on a little long. Can I attack this thing yet? And then I did. And then it put me through it again because I didn't do enough damage. And I said, okay. And then it put me through it a third time because I didn't do enough damage, because my attack stat just wasn't high enough yet. I don't think I had really upgraded it. So I just wasn't dealing enough damage. So that fight took forever. Spider, I actually didn't mind the first time, but I was like, okay, that was a fun thing to do once. I'm probably never gonna do it again. Maybe I did it twice. I don't know. That's the one where it shoots you super high in the air and you have to skydive down.
Yep.
Ashura was my least favorite thing in the entire game. I thought that was the jankiest guardian, just one of the jankiest things, period, because you would climb it, and I remember especially, I had died against that, and maybe this is a me thing, right? Like, it seems like a lot of people did, I don't know, I've heard conflicting things with this, because most people are like, dude, I just did it on my first try, it's whatever. It's whatever, it's not that janky. And I was like, are you serious? Like, if you watched me stream that thing, fighting that thing, I would like jump up, I would time to homing attack in between those like weird laser gates or whatever, and then the goddamn thing would turn even though you're on top of it, and so it would hit me into the lasers and then push me off, or better yet, it would stun lock me and just immediately kill me because you are not invincible after getting hit while you're getting up or whatever. And then you also have like all of those little laser balls that are crawling around it in the final section as well. I don't know. The camera, the way that it would like shift while you're on it, the fact that during the combat itself, you don't know whether or not you're going to droop down while you're like continuing to combo it, or if you're going to stay at the tip of the attack point, just led me to not trust a lot about the combat system immediately, or a lot about the game and its mechanics immediately. Like, and maybe that was just me. Maybe, that was just my experience with it. But yeah, I thought that thing was one of the jankiest things in the world. I actually, the one thing that I did like fighting was Ninja. Thing you have to kind of like dodge around, because again, it made you feel more agile, like you were actually taking advantage of the combat system. At least if you're going to put up a shield that can get around you and then continue to attack you that way. I think the additions to the combat system, like the things you unlock, honestly, it's just for creative expression, and that's it, because it looks cool. Other than that, it has no depth. But yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on the combat system.
I definitely agree that the Ashura is very, very janky. It's one of those things, like lots of stuff in various Sonic games, where there's a lot of problems and it's all kinds of whack all over the place. But if you figure it out, oh, it's super easy, no problem. But no, it definitely has lots of problems, and it's very, very janky. And that's like the first Guardian you run into when you get to like the game proper. which is not a great first impression at all.
Yeah, it's right after 1-2. The cyberspace level.
A lot of those bigger guardians that you would fight for longer periods, like the shark, or I forget what a lot of them are called, but like the one where you run on the trail that it flies around and leaves behind.
Fortress, I think that one was.
Squid?
Squid. Fortress is the one where you're grinding on rails, and it's basically the same thing. Like, all those fights would just drag on for so long, and they're just not that fun. Like, the first time you do it, it's like, okay, that was kind of all right, but you know, for like those ones specifically, they're just, you know, quick step, go left and right sequences, which we've all done 1,000 times in other Sonic games. It's always the same. And it just goes on and on and on for way too long. And you really just want to get back to running around in the open world because that's the fun part.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean, it's kind of like... I like the breath of fresh air that the combat kind of tries to give you while exploring the islands, because there are times where I'm like, okay, this is getting old. Like, I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I appreciate it for that, but at the same time, it's kind of a double-edged sword because of how the combat system in those fights can be in general. You know what I mean?
It's especially strange, I think, that the parry is not timed, that you can just hold it. Like, that makes the combat just laughably easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually kind of knew about that going into the game because my friend SD, who's been on the podcast a few times, he had played it before me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, just to parry, you hold L1 and R1, and then you just make the entire combat system a joke." And it's just like, really? That's what a parry is in this game? You hold L1 and R1 and instantly reflect everything and put it into slow mode and do as much damage as you want. Is there a reason why we think that they included such a thing? I can't think of one other than... I was
talking with you, Juice, that I think it probably was timed at some point in development.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe at some point they're like, you know, this is a kid's game, this is too hard, so we'll just make it a hold or something like that. That's the only explanation that makes any sense to me, because there's those turrets that they shoot the balls at you and you have to parry them, and it's like, that's not a challenge. There's zero difficulty to that. And there's ones where they're like the quote-unquote harder ones, where instead of having to reflect one ball, you have to reflect 3. And it's like, okay, that doesn't make it any harder because I just hold the buttons.
Yeah.
So I assume that those were supposed to be like, you're supposed to time the parry on each of those, and it gets harder because you have to do more in a row. Probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It has to be. It must. Like, I don't know what else it could be. Totally. And then as far as the side loop goes, I liked using it, but it did feel like pretty slow in a lot of cases. Because obviously when you're boosting, you don't have as much control over the circles that you're making, so they make up for that with instant side loop. But to make it not overpowered, you can only use it like twice before it recharges, which I feel like is just a balancing issue, because I would like the combat system to feel snappy, which instant side loop feels like it is snappy. If you could do it more and make it so that the enemy's defenses weren't immediately like taken away by it or something like that. I haven't really thought out exactly how they could balance it, but using it was a lot more fun to me than using the regular side loop to get rid of the enemy's defenses, especially when they're in groups of 4 and you have to like do it for all of them, but you have to do it individually because some are using their shields, some aren't, and the other ones are trying to swing at you in the middle of you using the side loop, so it makes it a huge pain in the ass. Rakanai, what are your thoughts on some of this stuff?
Oh, I mean, you already know my thoughts on parry. Like,
yeah,
having to learn it in the middle of a boss fight. I actually thought it was timed at first, and because of that, I kept getting my ass kicked over and over and over again. Because I play Dark Souls all the time. You have to like hit that stuff. Like even Breath of the Wild, like for your parry, you need to hit it on time. I was like, all right, why would this be any different? So that annoyed me. And then the side loop I didn't really use a whole lot in combat unless the enemy absolutely required it. Like the ones that I can remember are the ones that had like the dome shield that you have to side loop to knock them up in the air to get them out of that. I found those enemies incredibly annoying. I did not find those fun in any capacity.
I wish that you could
Agreed.
do more damage to it before it put its shell back on, because it seemed like such a non-challenge. You just have
Yep.
to do it 3 times to the point where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
I'm
Like
not
this is
doing
taking
enough
too
damage to kill
long.
it in one thing. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all right. Thanks for padding this out a little bit. But then like I could say this about the whole game. I feel like Sonic felt slow like without the boost.
Mhm.
Without boosting,
Definitely.
like his regular speed should have been higher. His agility should have been greater in almost every aspect of the game. Because I was holding boost the entire time. Like even in combat, like I would be holding it just to get an advantage because I couldn't move fast enough.
Yeah, I mean, the way the game treats the boost, it's basically the run button.
Yeah, it's like it's Sonic. Why do you need that? Like the boost is supposed to like help you get. Like I get it's supposed to help you get places faster, but when I can't like put this into words very well, but yeah, it was not a great mechanic when I had to hold it down the entire time.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of fun to have the super fast boost, like once you get all your rings and whatnot. But like that made me feel like Sonic, right? That was exhilarating, exploring the islands like super fast with the blue lightning trailing behind you and whatnot.
Yeah, that was
But
fun.
That's
yeah,
something we haven't talked about yet. When you do get your maximum amount of rings, you get like an enhanced Sonic mode, which pretty much made everything better. Like if you didn't have full rings, you weren't playing well.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it like you can always get full rings by looping 700 times, but it I don't know. You get hit once, and obviously like you lose a good amount of those rings, and then you have to loop just to get back to the exploring in a more fun way, which I think is kind of flawed. I would rather have it be fun the entire time. Not that it wasn't fun exploring, but you know what I mean. Like you were having more fun when you were in that lightning mode, like movie Sonic mode or whatever the hell was going on there. So the fact that you were taken out of it so much kind of stinks.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Honestly, I think they could have just ditched that whole system and just make the enhanced boost. That's just what boosting is at all times, because I always felt like I was neutered when I didn't have max rings. And so anytime I took a hit after the combat would be over, yeah, I would just run in a circle for 5 minutes until I got back up to max rings, which is just a waste of the player's time. Like, if you're going to let me just refill my rings for free, then just don't have that need and just let me have that speed all the time, because that makes the game way more fun.
Yeah, and to go along with that, I will say that because of that, I had upgraded my rings like 3 times, and then I realized I don't get that ability until I'm at max rings, no matter what my ring count is. I was like, oh, maybe like if my ring count is 800, even still, at 400 I'll get this mode, and at 800 I'll get like a faster mode, or I'll get a second ability or whatever. So like I always have this, but no, that is not the case. You have to have max rings to get that. So it's strictly a nerf outside of the supersonic boss fights to increase your rings. So I didn't. It's less fun.
Yeah, I never upgraded my rings, and I haven't seen people with upgraded rings. Like, when you take hits, do you still lose like almost all of your rings? Because at that point, what would even be the point of upgrading your capacity?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't get it.
You still lose the same number of rings, so it's not as damaging, but at the same time, there's not.
But like, let's say you get hit like 3 times, then it's like you're now at 0 probably, and you have to now get 1,000 rings before you can use that again instead of 400. Maybe you do lose the same exact amount of rings, and it's not a percentage base, but who knows? I figured that had something to do with your defense stat. Maybe
it would have been nice if it was like at 400 you got the boost, because then if you did increase your capacity, then you could take a hit and still have the boosted mode, and that would be good.
Yep. Or like even add like a second tier to the boost if you upgrade your rings enough. Like incentivize me to do so. There just wasn't anything there for it.
Now, did upgrading speed feel different for you guys? Because I didn't get it that high. I think I upgraded it to level 20 or something, and I felt no difference in the speed. But I wasn't sure if it was because it was too gradual, or if there was like so minimal difference that it didn't matter.
I want to say I saw a thing that the speed stat is for your non-boost running speed. So like if you max that out to 99, you basically have like the enhanced boost speed at all times, but that takes forever to do. So when you're boosting everywhere, it really doesn't do anything, I think. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Interesting. Yeah, speaking of that speed stat, I guess we can start to talk about our cyberspace levels. So, who wants to start talking about cyberspace? It's very, very different than the main gameplay style.
Rakanai, you go first.
I guess I'll start with this. I overall hated Cyberspace.
Okay.
Absolutely hated it. And it wasn't because of bad level design, it wasn't because of like reused levels, it was because the physics didn't transfer well in my opinion. Like I felt like I wasn't snappy enough to be able to get through a lot of things. I felt like the jump I hung in the air way too long. I felt like boosting was detrimental at times because I'd just fall into a hole by going way overboard. I don't feel like the physics in this case lent itself very well. That being said, I liked a lot of the level design. I loved seeing a lot of old levels like Skyrail, Metal Harbor, Chemical Plant be remade. I thought the story reasons for this were well enough to like justify it. But goddamn, that one level, I want to say it's 3-4, the drift level, where you're running through a Green Hill Zone and you're hitting these drift pads that like it did not work. That level was god awful, and I never want to touch it again.
Yeah, as far as that level goes, I'll definitely agree with you. I don't think there's any real point to it being there because, one, the drift is never in any other level to my knowledge, and two, I mean, it's just a reference to Sonic Unleashed, just like, I can't remember whatever the stage is called because I haven't played it. But it's actually faster to jump over those things than it is to actually use the drift, I'm pretty sure. Like, there's no...
Yep.
The drift itself isn't even good. So like it doesn't feel good to use ever. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that level. You can go ahead before me, Pariah.
Well, this will be interesting because I'm kind of on the opposite side from Rakanai here. I loved the cyberspace levels. They're my favorite part of the game. I come at this from a very particular place because my favorite thing in any Sonic game is to play levels over and over and try to get the best time that I can. You know, basically speedrunning, but I'm not actually a speedrunner. I'm not that good. You know, I just do the best that I can. And yeah, there are some physics and control issues in Frontiers, especially in the cyberspace levels, because I also tweaked my controls in the main game, but those tweaks don't actually translate to the cyberspace levels. They have like their own preset physics that they force you to use, which are not great. But after playing the levels a bunch and, you know, getting used to the kind of troublesome physics, I had a blast with them, playing them a bunch. I thought they were really, really fun. I did not like that they reused level design from older games. I think that's just lame. Though I do think that a lot of the levels are a lot more fun, actually, than their original versions, especially the SA2 levels. I'm sure we'll disagree on that, Juice.
Okay. Yeah, we will. But that's okay.
I'm not the biggest fan of SA2. I like it, but I don't love it. But I thought the original levels in Cyberspace were generally the most fun ones because they were like specifically designed for how this game works and how it controls. And I thought the level design on them was pretty interesting and fun. My favorite level was 4-4, which is the one Cyberspace level that's like pretty long. It's like a couple minutes long and a lot more hazards and stuff and more challenging platforming and stuff, and I really enjoyed that level a lot. And honestly, cyberspace was just my favorate part of the game. Like when you beat the game, you unlock arcade mode and you can just play cyberspace levels and try to get the best time. I did a ton of that. I had a ton of fun just playing the cyberspace levels a bunch, but I know that I'm definitely in the minority when it comes to that opinion.
Yeah, so I fall somewhere in between you two. So I am a speedrunner, a Sonic speedrunner in Sonic Adventure 2 and SA1 to an extent. And because of that, I definitely know that I know where that comes from, you know? I know where wanting to improve your time comes from, and I wanted to do that as well with a lot of these levels. Well, okay, I can't even say a lot of them, but definitely enough of them made me want to get the S rank times. You know, I think that the ranking system, you know, that's introduced in Sonic Adventure 2 was probably one of the best things that Sonic has ever done, ever. Rakanai is also a speedrunner. So the controls weren't super great. The jump specifically is my least favorite thing about the cyberspace levels, because the turning radius on them is so weirdly wide on the double jump that you can't act like... It made me not want to do a double jump a lot of the times, unless I was facing in a specific direction, because if you had to make, like, minor turns in the air to grab something like a red ring or something else like that, it was super hard to do, and I would end up, like, falling off of the stage, and things like that. And I don't think that's just me. I think that happens to the majority of people because of just how the game controls there. The turning radius in general isn't, like, super great. But I will say that my favorite cyberspace level is Metal Harbor. It was, you know, I love that level. First of all, the music is fucking crazy. Like, they hired Skrillex or someone to come in there, 4-1, and as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my god, it's time. Like, and I played that until I got the best possible time ever, because there was enough going in that level that made me want to do that. You know, it had a good jam. Also, I was using magnet dashes, which is where you homing attack and you cancel it with boost. So you just go fucking wild. You go crazy in one direction. And you can skip a lot of the level that way, which made me feel like I'm at home. Makes me feel like I'm playing a Sonic game. Makes me feel like I'm getting better. That one's a little bit more of a glitch than something like a Spindash jump, but you know what I mean? Like, it kind of gave me that same sense of freedom to explore the environment. And so yeah, but they're like, not every level was like that. You know, about, you know, half of them made me want to increase the time. The others made me want to do nothing. Like, I was like, all right, whatever, I'm good. Especially the 2D levels. I wasn't super crazy about those. I never really wanted to enter them much unless I had to. Unless I was like, okay, I did this in a minute. I can definitely do it in 50 seconds just to get that vault key. But I wasn't doing it because I was really enjoying it that much. You know what I mean? So I think that they have moments of brilliance, and I totally understand where you're both coming from. That's why I'm kind of in the middle with them. But I think the controls and that jump are the biggest things holding these cyberspace levels back. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty mixed bag from us. I was kind of expecting some of us to be on the same page, but I guess that shows, like, I don't know. I guess it shows that there was a lot of good stuff that did work for it. But it just
I think generally most people are on your side, Rakanai. Most of the time I hear people didn't really care for the cyberspace levels that much. And I totally understand why. My reason for liking them is very specific to me, I would say.
That's fair.
And I totally agree with a lot of your guys' criticisms about them. They just didn't personally bother me that much. Like, the 2D levels definitely are nowhere near as fun as the 3D levels, because the movement in this game is so cool in 3D with the stuff you can do. And yeah, I didn't feel inclined to do all of the levels with, like, super nice runs, because, like, yeah, that one level that's just the drifting, boring, and a lot of the other levels are, you know, some of them are really fun, some of them not as much fun.
There was one that was made for the cyberspace levels specifically. I remember it's kind of in that city level, and you start off and it's just this. I don't know if this is the one you said you like a lot. I can't quite remember. I know there are helicopters and stuff in it, but there are a couple like that, so I don't really know. I remember this one opens up and it has this, like, winding road, and then you can go straight, or there's like a red ring over here to
yeah, I think that is the level I'm talking about, 4-4.
Okay, so I have problems with this level specifically because I think the levels are at their best when you can do all of the challenges in one, which was kind of the goal of a lot of their design. Like, I could get the red rings, and I could get the best time, and I can hold my rings. And that level did not allow that, because you have to get the red rings over here, and then you have to get them through here. And yes, it does encourage replayability, and this is something that I praised SA2 for, because it makes you go back through those levels with the Chow Garden and by doing the other challenges, so you get better at them. It's like making you do that, essentially, right? So it's like, it's twofold. I don't know what their goals are. I'm not saying that every level has to make you do all of the challenges at once, but the branching pathways on that level all seem to lead to the same thing and didn't really benefit you one way or the other. Like, sure, there's probably a fastest path, but not by more than 10 seconds, you know?
Oh, wait, no, I know what level you're talking about. We are talking about a different level. Forget what level that is, but I know what level you're talking about now.
Yeah, it's like it starts off and you have to like go to the left to get one of the red rings, and then that leads you to a rail.
Not great.
Okay. Yeah, I think the one you're talking about has like more of a bird's eye view once you get on top of those like I think it's in the same like area though, isn't it? Like,
yeah, it's the city, and yeah, there's like a kind of like a top-down section where there's like the spinning spike wall things or the rotating things.
Yeah, I remember
and
that
there's kind
one.
of like a little maze in it as well.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
With them. Yeah, okay. I know what level you're talking about now. That level was awful for me. I had to play that one quite a few times to get all the challenges done.
Yeah. I think my favorite levels were honestly like some of the SA2 levels, but it's honestly like it's because of where I'm coming from in my Sonic background, where I got super hyped when I was recognizing the level design. Obviously, as a speedrunner of SA2, I'm like, as soon as I go down the first two rails in the Sky Rail, I'm like, I paused the game and I was like, Sky Rail. Okay. Like, I already know where I am. Unfortunately, they got rid of some of the design of that stage that makes it cool, like doing the pumpkin jumps to get a faster time and stuff like that. There's obviously like no spin dash jump. So I would say that Skyrail is a lesser version of the original, so I guess I disagree with you on that one, because it feels like you're just riding rail more without any of the mechanics of the rail system in Sonic Adventure 2 that actually made it, in my opinion, a good system where you have to keep your speed. When you take away that from just grinding on rails, and if you hop to one, you get like 5 rings, and the other one you get a red ring or something, and you can't see it coming, that's not really that great, in my opinion.
Skyrail is definitely one that is worse in Frontiers versus its original version.
Yeah, Metal Harbor though, I'm kind of like even on for the most, but like that's my favorite level in Frontiers, and I like it more in Frontiers probably than I do in Sonic Adventure 2. So, and I'm not sure if that's because of like the music or something that's making me feel that way, or if it's recency bias or something like that, but
I did not like the music in that level.
Okay, well, that's fun. I love the attitude that it was giving, because it was just telling me to like go, you know what I mean? Like, it's on my gym playlist now. So yeah.
I really like the music in the one level. It's Sonic Unleashed level. It's the thing where it's like a really long 2D section where it's got a lot of like tough platforming. Where it's got like the moving spike balls and stuff. If you remember that level?
Is that the one that goes around kind of like in a circle, like it's going up a tree? Okay, yeah, that level was actually pretty decent. I think that one actually performed a lot better than its Unleashed counterpart. At least I don't think I had as much trouble with it anyways.
Was the background from Sonic 3?
Yeah, it was the Sky Sanctuary background.
Sky Sanctuary, yeah, okay, I remember that one. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
By the way, the fact that not only is it reused level design, but reusing assets from Sonic Generations for the environments, that's pretty lame.
It was kind of lazy.
And there's only 4, themes for like 30-something levels in the game.
You've got Green Hill, you've got Chemical Plant, you've got Sky Sanctuary, and then you've got Generic City level.
Is that from a Sonic game that I just haven't played? Or is that
new?
It's new.
Okay.
I think it was like supposed to be like a more modern like take on like Radical Highway or whatever the one is from Sonic Adventure 1. Either way, it was bland, didn't do anything for me.
Which also, people were saying it was from another Sonic game, and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. If you know or you think it is, let me know in the comments. But speaking of Radical Highway, I think that was also much weaker in this game than it is in the original, because they took like the worst section of Radical Highway and they put it. Well, I can't even say the worst section, but it started off on the drawbridge, which is a really cool part of the original level because you have so many paths to get to like different places, and there's like clearly a fastest one, and it leads to creative expression, and that's kind of there. But it starts the level like that, and then it immediately puts you into the like the twirly thing, and then just ends. I don't know. I like the original
all the
Radical
levels
Highway.
are truncated a little bit.
Oh no, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So I guess they were just, what can we cut out to get that level length? Because the levels are like the same level length as like Sonic Forces levels. Basically, around like a minute each, roughly. Which I wish they were longer.
I agree. I feel like even if there were less of them, I would have been okay with them being longer, like 3-4 minute levels.
I'm cool with even around like 2 minutes. I think a lot of them expected you, like some of the timings were like, oh, the S rank is a minute 30 or a minute 40, or things like that. So. Mm-hmm. I think like if you're going super fast, a lot of them can be a minute, but your first time through might not be. It might be a couple minutes, 2:30, something like that.
Speaking of the time requirements, did either of you have any issues with any of them? Because I know personally, I want to say it was 1-2 or 1-3. The first Sky Sanctuary level had a really, really tight time.
That's 1-2. That's infamous for that.
Okay. That's the only level that has a tough time like that, which is very weird.
Yeah,
it was in World 4 that I had another issue. It was one of the chemical plant zones.
Interesting.
I don't remember which one it was, but I had a huge problem with that one as well.
I know there was one level in World 4, at least I'm pretty sure it was Island 4, maybe it was Island 3, that was like literally 30 seconds long or something like that. But speaking of 1-2, yeah, actually, before I even streamed the game, my buddy Craftus was like, oh, you gotta play Frontiers, you bought it, like, just play it. But I was like, dude, I'm waiting, I gotta stream the whole thing, so I can, my first time reactions to it can be live. He was like, no, you gotta, and I was like, whatever, I'll play, like, the first 2 stages or something. And then I sat there, and it took me forever to S rank 1-2. I was also doing like magnet dashes and everything else to go as fast as possible. So, but it made me feel like I didn't have to once I got around to streaming the game, because I had already done it. That's the only one I personally had a challenge with. My chat was actually trolling me a lot of times, and I was like, okay, what's the S rank time for this? Do you guys know? Because a lot of them had already played the game, and they would tell me something like 30 seconds faster than it is. So I would be resetting before I even get to the goal, thinking it's way faster than I have to be, but it made me better at the game. So,
Thanks, chat.
See, this is another thing where I'm going to be in the minority. Like 1-2, I liked how hard it was to get the S rank there, because a lot of Sonic games, especially the more recent ones, the S ranks are like so easy that like you get them accidentally without even trying. And not all of the Sonic Frontiers levels are like that, but a decent number of them, it doesn't really take that much to get the S ranks, I didn't think. That was the only level where I had to really work for it, where I was like, I had to shave off, 2 seconds, and then another second, and then another second, multiple tries at it, really trying to like refine the route. And that's the kind of stuff I like doing anyway in Sonic levels. So I wish that that one was a little bit easier, but all the other ones were a little bit harder. So the S rank would be something you had to like really go for.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, because it's not like you need to get the gears in that way, right? Like you can get them from fighting the bosses, you can get them from fishing. So why make that requirement so easy in the majority of the levels? I also like that 1-2 is hard. It could have afforded to be a little bit easier. If I played it forever, then yeah, I would probably understand how to get that time without like using magnet dashes or whatever. But because I knew how to do that, I did that instead, and it still took a while. I would like that one could have been a little bit easier, but the rest of them could have definitely afforded to be harder, because it's not like they were gating your progression entirely by that. You had other ways of getting it, and you could still get 3 out of the 4 vault keys by doing the other 2 challenges, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, if you're gonna ask the player to, beat the level in a certain time, make that something that you actually have to work for, to some degree, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I the majority of the stages I think I completed within 1 or 2 runs, which was kind of disappointing. A little bit
But
more
I
challenge
guess-
would have been nice.
I assume partially, also the reason why the levels are so short is probably because they wanted you to be able to pop in and out and get back to the open zone. So they probably didn't want you playing it, 10 times in a row trying to get the S rank or something for the most part. I don't know why 1-2 was like that.
Yeah,
I
but
can see that.
I guess, but it's also like it's your choice to come and go at any time. Like it's always there for you to come back to.
But there's always going to be people that are like, I have to get it, and I'm not leaving until I get it.
Of course, but then that's them. That's on them. That's not on the.
That's true.
At least that's how I see it. Because I'm kind of like that to a degree, So I get it, but I wouldn't blame the developers for that because there are so many other ways to get the gears, which is what the game is actually trying to tell you to do to actually progress through the gameplay loop. I wouldn't be like, oh, this is the developers. No, I'd be like, this is me because I'm like this, So. Okay, so moving on from Cyberspace, I guess that was a lot. We could talk about the supersonic bosses, which I think I like these a lot. When it comes to the set pieces, also it's super funny. Every time I get into one of these fights, I hear Kellen Quinn, who I was in a pop punk band when I was younger. I grew up listening to Sleeping with Sirens, and Pierce the Veil, and All Time Low, and a lot of these bands. And Kellen Quinn was the lead singer of Sleeping with Sirens. So it's super funny to hear this person in a Sonic game for me, because it's so weird and out of the blue. And I imagine not everyone kind of has that experience. They're just like, oh, here's this like famous singer. But for me, it's someone who I've listened to so much that it's like, why is he in my Sonic game? What's going on here? I guess I just wanted to bring that up real quick because I thought it was funny. Though, I really like the music of these. I like a lot of the set pieces. I like the references to Dragon Ball, because those are always cool. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the first boss, Sonic like punches through in the same fashion that Kid Goku does to King Piccolo. Another one of the bosses has you slicing through him like Trunks does to Mecha Frieza. Obviously, Sonic is inspired by Dragon Ball, so you get a lot of these things. But as far as the other than like the scale and like the epicness, I'll use that word unironically here, of these fights, I don't know how much I enjoyed I don't know how much I enjoyed them mechanically. I think that it didn't do a super great job of trying to teach you how to fight them. It felt like there was a lot of pressure, which was cool, but I felt confused at times because I would be doing something and I'd be like, okay, it wants me to do something and I don't understand what it wants me to do. And there would be inconsistencies from phase to phase. So that's kind of how I feel about them in a nutshell. I think that, like, I always felt good and felt happy when I was fighting them and, like, when I completed it. But I was also sometimes like, what the hell does it want me to do? So that's my experience with them.
Well, Rakanai, you've already talked a little bit about how you feel the bosses. You have anything else to say?
So, aside from my absolute hatred of the first boss, mainly because the game didn't teach me what I needed it to, I loved Wyvern. I honestly think that fight and that sequence was probably the best that the game had to offer in terms of anything. I had so much fun flying after this thing, parrying missiles back at it, going in to punch it. Like that plus the music along with it, like, I absolutely loved that boss fight, which unfortunately made Knight and Supreme afterwards feel not as fulfilling because I had so much fun with Wyvern. And the final boss of the game, that like
That's a whole thing we could talk about.
Let's save that for afterwards. But God, so Knight, I thought it was it was a cool concept. Like, attack it for a bit. Okay, it's gonna throw the shield at you. All right, let's parry it, throw it back, use the angles. I thought that was like pretty unique.
That was cool. Yeah,
like it was a lot of fun. Supreme felt like a letdown after like what we had with Wyvern and Knight. Like, it was just like, all right, I just feel like this is Giganto plus. There's not a whole lot going on here.
Yeah. I liked Wyvern as well. I was a little bit confused as to what I was supposed to do once I got close to it, because at first it was like, okay, it's going to attack once and I'll parry this, and then it's going to attack twice and then I'll parry those and then I'll attack it, but I didn't realize it wanted me to Psyloop or something, and then that phase lasted longer one time than it did another time. So those are like the weird inconsistencies that I'm talking about when it comes to the fights. That I was like, okay, what the hell does I mean, maybe it was just me, because other people, when they were watching me, they were like, okay, this didn't happen to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, what you're describing, I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I didn't have that problem either.
Yeah, you know that phase in Wyvern where you hit it and then it's like doing this dance or whatever?
Yeah.
It looks like it's like moving around, and then you like, I was told to like Psyloop it there, so I did like an instant Psyloop, and that moved it on to the next phase. But then you run out of the instant Psyloop, so you can't do that, and then you just have to wait for that to end, because punching it doesn't actually do damage to it. You have to wait for that phase to end for it to attack another time, and then parry that before you can actually do damage. But what I was confused about is moving it to that next phase, because in one instance I moved it there from instant Psylooping, and the next time I just had to wait it out and couldn't do anything until it's just decided to stop doing that, and then attacked again. Does that make sense?
It's been a while, because I played the game when it came out. I haven't touched it since, so I don't exactly remember all the specific details of the fight, so I can't say.
Okay. That was my only problem with that fight.
I didn't have any of that happen. I was going in, I did damage, and it just immediately, once I did enough, it just backed me out of it and went to the next phase.
I'll have to. What happened to me too, I think.
I'll have to show you my stream of it. But Knight was my personal favorite. So
Knight, I think, is the best one, definitely.
I really like the creativity of like riding the shield and then having to parry it and throw it into it, and then just Sonic holding a giant S. So it's just too cool. It's too memorable for it to not be my favorite. I'm sorry. It's just
I couldn't get enough of it in Sonic and the Black Knight.
I didn't even play Sonic and the Black Knight. I played Sonic and the Secret Rings, and I said that's all I want to do with this gameplay style. I will eventually go back to it because people say that one's good, but I didn't like Secret Rings at all, so I just didn't play Black Knight.
No one did. It's fine.
I liked it.
No one did.
But I was also a kid, so I haven't played it in like 15 years.
I know some of the cutscenes for Black Knight because I've used them in some of my character analyses, so I get it, but I never played it because I played Secret Rings and hated that one. But anyway, yeah. And then the final one, just before Pariah, you talk about your things, I might as well talk about how I feel about the last boss too. I was also confused in that one. Because I remember it being on its last phase or whatever, and like I had figured out what I need to do, which is pretty much, that one's like the simplest one to figure out. Until the end, where it doesn't tell you that you have to destroy those laser things in order to progress it to the final phase. Because you destroy one of those laser things in front of it, like at the end, it has like 10 of them all around you. And maybe you guys just did this right off the bat, I don't really know. But I was getting so much leeway out of just getting through those lasers and attacking the main enemy, and then parrying what it had to bring it to its next phases, that I had no idea all of a sudden, to bring it to its final phase, I have to destroy one of these laser pods that it has. I didn't get why that was a thing. But maybe, yeah.
I didn't realize that was even a trigger, because I guess like it was in my way, so I hit it, I destroyed it, and then got onto the boss. Like, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I don't think
felt very awkward for me, because yeah, you would like weave in between everything to start hitting the boss, and he'd like do a move to like hit you away, and even if you parried it, it would hit you back, and then you just like reset. and I didn't know that I was not doing the right thing, so I would just keep on doing that because I was chipping away at his health. So I just did that until it was on to the next phase or the boss was finished. I don't even remember.
Yeah, I was doing that up until I wasn't able to damage him anymore, in which case you have to, at least in my case, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was like chipping out, and the very like smallest amount ever is by just destroying a laser pod in front of it. And that's when it was at like a quarter HP, by the way. I'd never had to do it before then. And then killing that, like hitting that thing, instantly brought it into him like throwing me at the wall, and then you having to, or whatever the heck his final thing was, you know what I mean? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember what happened to me at that phase.
Yeah, in order to trigger that, I had to destroy one of those laser pods. Overall, that was like the most underwhelming one for me as well, though, Rakanai. So yeah, now you can fully go on with your thoughts on the Pariah.
I really didn't care for the bosses pretty much at all. Like, the spectacle of them is cool. You know, the music and all the cool animations of Sonic doing anime stuff. That's all neat. But, I mean, I've been around the block. I've seen cool spectacle stuff done many times, much cooler than that. So it didn't really do much for me. I was like, yeah, this is doing cool Sonic's fighting giant monsters and doing cool animations and stuff. Yeah, I'm very thick-skinned when it comes to spectacle these days. Like, something's got to be really cool to get me going, and that just didn't really do it for me too much. And then mechanically, the fights, you know, because they just rely on the underwhelming combat, I really didn't enjoy them very much. The knight where you have to like redirect his shield and have it bounce around to hit him. That was cool. I liked that one. But all the other ones, it was just, you know, same as pretty much all the Guardian fights. You wail on them until they get to the next phase and you parry their attacks, and then you do some kind of little mini game thing that's whatever. It's fine. I don't generally like the supersonic minigame boss fights in Sonic games in general, because they're always like really cool spectacle wise, but they're very blah in terms of gameplay most of the time. There's just no substance to them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like these are the supersonic fights with probably the most depth in them, and yet it still feels like there's not much there, and that they just turned the spectacle up to 11, which, you know, I think it's an improvement on past supersonic fights, definitely, and it made me feel good to see Sonic doing the things, but I didn't feel super good or like good at the game because I was doing them. It did feel like more of the same thing, except again with the spectacle turned up to 11. And you're right, there's a lot of games that do that, but better. So I totally I see that viewpoint as well. It's interesting. Yeah. So you think that the Wyvern was the best thing in the game had to offer. You didn't really care for them.
Nope.
And then I'm somewhere in the middle again. I don't know what this curse is.
We all just have different opinions, and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh no, it's totally. I mean, if anything, it's cool.
Unlike what a lot of the Sonic community would have you believe, it is okay to have different opinions.
100%. It's always interesting for me to see where those opinions come from, you know, and that's why I kind of have this podcast in the first place, because I want to see what everyone's subjective viewpoints are and what we can and can't agree on, and why, and what the normative stance is, and just kind of understanding the feelings behind those opinions, I guess. That's why I even do this. So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then lastly, before we get into story, I suppose we can get into some of those random gameplay styles, which kind of goes into the story now, doesn't it? Isn't that funny? So
before that, do we want to talk about the final boss, or maybe we could talk about that with the story, because it's very tied to the story stuff?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, we might as well just tackle it now, right? I mean, we're talking about the bosses anyway, and we're talking about the random gameplay styles. Okay, so I don't know why I didn't give a spoiler warning when I'm analyzing, you know, a full game with people for 3.5 hours, but yeah, spoiler warning for everything in the game, by the way. So the final boss, if you're on hard mode, is different than if you're on normal mode or easy mode, which, by the way, the difficulty setting isn't even something we went over, but I don't think it makes much of a difference at all. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, so I played on hard mode from the start, and because I knew, either way, that there was going to be a secret boss at the end. And that secret boss happens to be the big person in the sky who's talking you through everything that you need to do. And in the regular gameplay, the game ends after the fourth Guardian, I guess. Or Titan, rather. And then in hard mode, what happens is you fly up to space in the Titan that was taken over by this thing with Sage, and you start playing a shoot 'em up, or a bullet hell, rather. So, and that bullet hell was taught to you in the game before, like you have to do it. It's one of the random gameplay styles that you have to do. The hacking missions with Tails, and then you have to do it once again on the last island with Sage. So it's like, it's teaching you it, right? But you wouldn't expect that the final fucking boss of this game is a bullet hell. Why on earth did they do this, other than strapped for time? Is there a single reason that anyone can think of that this would be the final boss?
I think that is exactly the reason. I don't think they had time to do what they wanted to do for the final boss, so they just did that.
That's the only thing I could think of. That, or someone just really likes Galaga. Like, fuck. Oh my god. Like, it was... So, when I went through on normal originally, got through, saw, like, the ending cutscene, didn't even get the bullet hell, and I was super underwhelmed. I was like, this was an awful ending. What the heck? I found out a couple days later after watching someone else's stream that there was a secret final boss, so I was like, alright, I'll go back and play it. It didn't change anything for me. I was like, this ending is awful. Like...
Yeah.
I mean, bullet hells I'm not good at to begin with, but like it's such an odd choice that like the only thing that makes sense is they ran out of time.
Yeah, and as far as like the theming of the final boss and stuff, we'll probably go into obviously when we get into the story of like what the story even is about. But I don't, is there a Sega bullet hell? Like, wasn't this inspired strictly by a Sega bullet hell? Because I was like, oh, why am I playing Toho all of a sudden? I don't think it's that, because there's a specific one that you absorb, like when you're shooting one of the colors, you can like move through it, and is it like Ikamura? I can't remember what the heck it's called.
Ikaruga. It's called
Ikaruga. Okay, like people kept saying that in my chat, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. I've never played it before. The only bullet hell I know that's not like a shoot 'em up, like in this sense, is Toho. I'm pretty sure that was on like Saturn and Dreamcast and stuff like that. I think I know what it is now. If I look it up, I might have seen it before. But it's like, but speaking on the boss as a whole, though, first of all, don't play the game in Japanese like I did. You have to switch it to English, because you will not. The boss talks to you the entire time. And
with no subtitles. Yeah,
there are no subtitles for some reason. She also, or whatever, the end, whatever it is, doesn't have subtitles in the beginning of the game as well. And before I forget, it should also probably have some name tags over the characters who are talking when there's no voiceover. By the way, that's another slip of the developers. But yeah, so don't play the game in Japanese, at least, or if you're going to play it in Japanese, play it to Japanese up until the end, where switch to English so you can actually understand, or whatever your native language is, so you can actually understand what the boss is saying. Because throughout the entire fight, it's really not even, I mean, I guess it is kind of lore dumping stuff on you, but it's mainly just saying that you can't do it the whole time, which... whatever. We'll go into that when we get into story. The boss itself I didn't hate it. Like, I like bullet hell stuff. I like shoot 'em up games, so I was like, I was just laughing, right? Like, I get to the final boss and I'm like, first of all, I kind of had the idea that it was the moon or something. Obviously there are just thematic elements behind that, but there's a scene in the story, I remember specifically with Sonic looking at a moon for way longer than would ever make sense for it to be, other than it being some sort of foreshadowing. The promo art for the game also has a giant moon like standing above Sonic, and I'm like, what is this? What does the moon have to do with all of this, right? And then you get there, and I'm like, am I gonna have to fight the moon? Like, I was saying that as a joke when I was streaming, and then people were like giving me like funny emotes or something, and I was like, okay, that just tells me that I'm kind of somewhere on the mark. And then I go into space, and then you just see a giant moon. I'm like, you can't be fucking serious. What am I what am I dealing with? I was just laughing when I got to it. I think the only part of the boss fight that I didn't like was the part where it has the giant laser beam that comes out of it. Because if you don't shoot it continuously on the side, it'll just do that forever. And I didn't know that, so it had me sitting there waiting for the next phase. I didn't know that you had to keep shooting it because it wasn't even doing anything to the health bar. So I was like, okay, why shoot it in this phase if the only time I'm really damaging it is with my, like, super shots or whatever? So I just didn't do that, and it did the laser phase, like, 5 times in a row, and I was like, okay. And then I eventually shot it, and it went to the next phase, and I was like, why? That was my only gripe with that fight. Other than that, I think it was a pretty good challenge, you know? Especially, like, the last phases, like, with those 6 or those 5 lasers coming through, and then having to go left and right with the lasers as it's shooting those, you know, the multiple colors at you. The final phase, I think, was the toughest. But overall, like mechanically, it was fun. I enjoyed it as a boss fight in that genre. But, like, I wasn't expecting it, obviously.
Yeah, I was surprised at how actually difficult that fight was, because there's not really much stuff like that generally in Sonic games of like a significant difficulty spike toward the end. Like generally, yeah, it's more the spectacle stuff, but that was like hard. Like I was playing it and I was like, I bet you a bunch of people are having trouble with this fight because it's like a real challenge. It's a real bullet hell. I was very surprised by that, but I thought it was cool having a bullet hell for the final boss in a Sonic game. I don't know about that. I mean, Kirby does it all the time. It works for Kirby. It worked for Nier Automata. But Sonic, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel Sonic enough to me to be a final boss fight. And I think that's like my biggest problem with it. It just felt so out of place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my issues with it came from story stuff, which we'll talk about later. The fight itself, I thought it was fine, but it just didn't feel like a final boss fight.
Right. I thought it was challenging up until I learned that you can just hold whatever color, like you can shoot that color and then not get damaged by the other one, no matter what. But as soon as I learned, because I didn't know that, so it was difficult until I learned that, and then I got through it, like my 3rd try. Because someone in chat was like, oh yeah, you could just do that, and I was like, oh my god. So that makes the entire thing easy up until pretty much the end in the laser section, so you always have enough to get through. But I wouldn't know that because I didn't play the game that it's based off of. So yeah.
Yeah, I struggled a bit with that fight. I think it took me about 45 minutes to do.
It took me longer to do the pinball.
Oh, the pinball.
The pinball was the best part.
We are on random gameplay styles. Do we just want to go right to pinball?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. This was the worst fucking thing in this game ever. This is the worst. I hated it. Oh my god. First of all, I mean, I got into it. I was like, okay, you know, funny pinball, you know, and then I looked at the score counter and how little it was going up as I was playing it, and I was like, okay, that's fine. And because I saw the multipliers, right? But it took me like, I want to say 4 or 5 tries because, and they took so goddamn long, man, because unless you get those multipliers stacked up, which go away if you die, you're never gonna get it, right? And every single or like 8 out of the 10 times that I died, 4 out of the 5 times, was out of my control completely. It would clip through the goddamn flippers, or the bumpers would hit it to the sides, and then I would lose my multipliers and run out of lives.
Sounds like a 3D Sonic game to me.
I was so pissed. I was screaming. I took my sword out from here, and I was like, "You want to go, game?" Like, it was just, oh my god, it was the worst, man. It's funny thinking back on it, but jeez, and other people are like, "Oh, I got through it first try," and I was like, "How?" Like, it just it completely glitched out for me. It was like so weird. Ugh.
Hey, Juice.
Yeah.
What?
I got through it first try.
Damn.
A lot of people did, and then other people just got completely messed up by it, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
That was definitely the worst part of the game. It didn't take me that many tries, but I was just like quickly looking at it, playing it. I'm realizing, oh, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You see how high the score you need to get, and you see the multipliers, and you die, and you're like, okay, this is not going to be fun. Because it all relies on the multipliers. The score is so ridiculously high that nothing you do matters other than getting the multipliers. Everything else is irrelevant. And because you lose it all when you die, that would be okay if the physics were reliable. But yeah, you clip through stuff or go in random directions and you'll just die and it's no fault of your own. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, like it would be one thing if if when you died it was your fault all the time. And pinball does have stuff like that, right? Where you'll go off to the left and right. That's part of any pinball game. But never in my life have I ever seen it happen to me as much than in the Sonic Frontiers pinball. And maybe I just have horrible luck, but man, oh man. It was that, and then it was the time that it clipped through the actual flipper twice, and I was like, okay, that's just ridiculous.
Like good old SA1 pinball.
Did it actually? I can't even remember if it clipped through back then.
Oh yeah.
Man, oh man.
Casinopolis is great, though. What are you talking about?
Well, that's because
Best
you can
level in
just
the game, of course.
you can just when you spin dash jump through the wall and then spin dash jump to go get the Chaos Emerald early, like I do.
Yep. Oh, and the sewers. Oh man.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So pinball.
Also, one last thing on the pinball. As someone who's been getting into pinball recently, like actually playing pinball games, it was a terrible table. There's nothing to do on it.
Yeah, it was just not a lot of fun.
There's no loops, there's no spinners, it was just the one little thing at the top and a couple bumpers. It's like, all right, you guys did the bare minimum amount for this.
Yeah.
God, you couldn't have taken any more inspiration from Sonic Spinball? Heck, even doing a small level like that would have taken 3 or 4 minutes would have been preferable.
Just copy and paste the Sonic board from whatever from SA1 and throw it in. That had more going on than this. Way more.
They had the pinball table in Generations too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It did have a pinball table. I forgot about that one.
That game. Why not that?
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, definitely my least favorite part of the game, I think, would be the pinball. It was funny, though. It made for good content, I guess, but that's not... that doesn't matter as far as game design goes.
That's not a great selling point, though.
No, I know. I have to say something good about it, That, it had some sort of positive impact in my life.
I don't know. I didn't have as many problems as you guys. I didn't see any of the clipping. I had no problems whatsoever with it, but, it overstayed its welcome for me.
Definitely.
I was after a minute, I was like, all right, I'm done with this. Can we move on, please?
Mm-hmm. I figure, I know that whatever happened to me probably didn't happen to half of the people, but I've seen enough complaints about it to the fact where it's happened to enough people where they get completely just messed up at no fault of their own. And I can send you that entire part of the stream, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, this is the worst thing ever. But yeah, so other random gameplay styles, we have the pinball, we had the shoot 'em up. What else was there?
There was the light laser puzzle on the first island.
The light laser. Oh yeah. I forgot about that. People were saying that was going to be really hard, but I found it to be pretty easy. I don't know, or it took people a bunch of.
I didn't have much of an issue with it, but I've seen people take a long time on that.
But isn't it like consistent? Like if you move the tower this way, then it moves in this way. So you just have to kind of keep track of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a puzzle like that. Some people struggle with that kind of thing, I guess.
Totally.
I cheated that puzzle. I figured out that if you like only move it slightly in the right way, you can move the other pillars, but not the one that you're on.
Oh.
So I just cheated the entire thing when I figured that out. Because I wasn't about it.
That's busted.
Yeah. I like as soon as I realized that, I was like, all right, here we go. Just halfway. All right, everything else is moving. I've moved back. All right, there we go. Move the next one.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that part of the game because even though it felt a little out of place, it also kind of didn't with everything else that they've been throwing at you with the little puzzles in the game. So I was okay with it, and I liked doing it. I like doing things. I just like puzzles, I guess. But I didn't know you could choose it like that. That's awesome. And people were telling me, "Oh, time for this to take 45 minutes," and I was just like, "Really?" I don't. But I totally get it. Like it just works a different part of the brain that a lot of people some people are better at certain things than others, just like anything else. So.
And generally, when you come to a Sonic game, you don't really think of puzzles. Like all the puzzles in the game in the overworld are like, that's not what I come to a Sonic game for. And a lot of them are very like, obvious, where the entire puzzle is you going, oh, okay, I see what I have to do. And then it's over in your brain in 2 seconds. And you just have to go through the motions to solve the puzzle. Like I wish that there was more, thought that went into a lot of the puzzles just overall in the game.
Yeah, I wish that the puzzles actually used Sonic's like abilities rather than just side-looping this. And I don't mean in the fact where it's like, oh yeah, I'll side-loop this Tetris piece and then this Tetris piece, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how exactly they would do it, but somehow finding a way to, if they were going to include puzzles, do it in a way that actually includes Sonic's abilities. I did like the block, not the block puzzles, the square ones. But that's just because I like those kind of puzzles. That was like the one puzzle where I was like, oh, I'm not just doing one thing and then that's the puzzle, where it's like you approach a puzzle and you already know exactly what you do to solve it. You go up to that, and you know what you need to do to solve it, but you still have to figure out the best path to get there, as opposed to the other ones where it's just like circle these 3 torches, or you know what I mean?
The ones where you just like sidestep to hit buttons is like, what is that?
Oh yeah, that's not even a puzzle. You know?
Those were like, all right, we're gonna keep moving back and forth. But let's see how long this one takes.
Mm-hmm. Like, the game has already taught you how to do that in combat and stuff like that, so I don't know why it needed to include so many of those. I don't really get it.
That's the kind of thing, like if it was a Zelda game, that would be something you do one time in the game. That would be like a dedicated little mini-game side quest that you would do, that would have like 3 levels to it, that would get harder, and you have to complete all of them to get a reward or something. But it's just like a little 5-second thing that you just do when it's over.
Yeah, because it's not really a mechanic that they build on. It's not like in A Link to the Past where you learn that you can move blocks and then block puzzles become increasingly like harder as you go, or anything like that. It's just you do it. So go ahead, Rakanai. I think you were gonna say something.
I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Shit.
But I do know something else we can talk about.
Sure.
Do you guys remember the crane game puzzle at the end of Ares Island?
I do.
I hated it because and Craftus was in my chat. He was like, "It tests your depth perception. If you're not good at this, then you're not good at Sonic games." I was like, "Shut the hell up! You can't be serious right now. Stop it! Stop it!"
Justification right there. God, like this was like the camera angle was so bad for this. Like,
It was really funny. Like it gave you leeway when dropping the balls down, but not picking them up. It was really weird. Like I was like, what am I doing wrong? It looks like I'm over the ball. I'm going over to it, and it's picking it up for a second and then dropping it down. So I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And then they were saying, "Oh, you're not on it," and I'm like, "How is it picking it up then?" I don't really understand what you mean. And then I guess I needed to move a centimeter to the left or something, and yeah. Didn't really like that. I don't understand. What's the point? Why the crane machines? Why all these little things?
Because we gotta put stuff in the game. It's like Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild had minigame puzzle stuff like this. We gotta put stuff in the game.
Yeah, I guess, but yeah,
was there even a story reason for it? Like, I don't even remember as far as that goes.
There was definitely cutscenes before and after, but I don't remember what the context was.
I don't think there was any.
Was there not?
I feel like it was like afterwards. It was just like Knuckles being like, "All right, cool, you did it. Let's go do this thing."
Yeah, I can't remember exactly.
There was any, like, huge implications.
Yeah, it was
turning on a machine or something.
You had to turn on the machine in order to use the cranes and put those balls in place. And once you put those balls in place, the wall like exploded, so you can move on.
And
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
At that point, it was like the last thing you did in the area.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, Knuckles kind of checking out the technology and using it. I mean, you know, the ancient technology and being invested in that kind of stuff and being like, oh, what a cool defense mechanism this is. Sonic, here, you have to do this. But I think that's the end of the story reasons for that existing. In Breath of the Wild, when you had to do challenges, other than the gyro things in the shrines, it was all based off of everything that you did to interact with every other part of the world. There's nothing else in the world where it's in Sonic where it's like, okay, now it's a crane machine, now it's a bullet hell, now it's a pinball machine. You know what I mean? Like, these are concepts that have to grow as you learn the mechanics of the game, and that's not what these things are. You know, they're just there to make the game more chaotic. It seems like I really don't know.
It's just for some variety, you know. You finish the island. Here's your little mini game before you go on to the boss. I guess.
Yeah, to control the chaos juice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, it was just really funny to me, I guess. It's like, I think this is the most chaotic game I've ever played in my life. It really feels like there's so many clashing elements to it, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of fat in the game that it doesn't really need to be there. Like the slot machine thing that happens when it goes nighttime and there's the meteor showers, and it's like, I don't know why this is in the game.
Yeah, it actually broke the system even further, because you could just be traveling through and you would get so many fishing coins that carry on from island to island. So as soon as you find that fishing spot, you can completely beat the island without interacting with the entire thing for the most part.
That's how I beat the last island, actually.
Yeah, so it's broken. Also, the fact that slot machine has to stay there also sucks, because you cannot see. It obstructs such a big part of your view, of seeing in front of you in a 3D Sonic game. Like, why would you put it there? I remember having to do that rail version of the squid, whatever you called it, the fortress. Yeah, with that thing on, and I just couldn't see when the bullets were being shot down the rails in some cases, and I was like, man, like, when do I have to jump? When do I not have to jump? I don't know. I can't see. So I hated that. I think it was kind of pointless, but yeah. What about that slot machine?
Yeah. Can we talk about the fishing? Because you just mentioned it.
We could talk about fishing.
It was it was not bad, actually. I kind of enjoyed it. It was a nice little relaxing piece within the game. Like, wasn't integral. You didn't need to do it if you didn't want to, but if you wanted to take a little break from the monotony of it all, it was a nice break. Plus, you could, cheese the heck out of it and use said coins to pretty much buy everything you'd ever need.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mind the fishing. I think, it was simple. I kept making the joke that, finally, we're at the main gameplay style of Sonic Frontiers. Every time I got to it, I was like, all this shit in the middle is just, it shouldn't be here. It should just be the fishing. If you're like me, you kind of, at first I tried to pace out, getting the egg memos, because I was like, oh, I got a couple of them, and they give me some good lore stuff. But then the second one, I just had enough fishing coins that I just bought every single one and kind of spoiled some of that context for myself. But it's context that's actually necessary to fully appreciate the story. So, yeah. As far as like I said it a couple times, the economy of the fishing is pretty broken. It's, it's very simple, but it makes some cute little references to classic Sonic games. You get some cool lore from it. Not sure why it's over there. And overall, I didn't really mind it, I enjoyed every time I was there because it was like, oh, I can take a deep breath and do this now. So, yeah.
I would have preferred if the actual act of fishing itself was a game and not just a QTE. Like, it's pretty nothing. I actually like big fishing in SA1 more because that's something you have to, like, play and actually do, and you can do well or do poorly. The QTE is just, like, so blah that it's just a process to transfer your purple coins into fish tokens to buy things, and I'm just like, it's just taking time. So I didn't like the fishing particularly. Like, it's relaxing, but I don't really care about that. I'm trying to play a Sonic game here. So I really didn't do fishing for the entire game. I did it once just to try it, and I was like, okay, well, this is a waste of my time. And yeah, it like totally messes with the whole system. So I didn't do it because I wanted to play the game,
Yeah.
But I think they did that intentionally because, like, Mario Odyssey did the same thing where at the end of the game you can just buy as many moons as you want with coins. So if you just want to, get to the end, you can just do that if you feel like it. Which I don't know. I guess, if you're not enjoying the game, it's a way to get around stuff you don't want to do. So that's kind of good. But it would also just be better if there weren't parts of the game you didn't want to play,
Yeah, that's my problem with it, is I feel like, and I brought this up at the beginning of the podcast, is in order to get stuff like the gears or in some of the islands, the memory tokens are a complete pain in the ass to get, like the last island, or you don't really want to interact with a lot of the level in Chaos Island because it's not as well designed, or it's less fun, according to the three of us, you know what I mean? So you have the fishing there instead, which you get way more for doing it in less time than you would interacting with this. And I just don't think that escaping the main gameplay loop to go to this QTE in order to beat the game is a good cop-out. It feels more like a cop-out than like just designing a more normatively solid game,
Yeah, like what you said, Rakanai, how you just use fishing to just skip the entire game. If you were enjoying the game, you wouldn't have been inclined to do that. The fact that you felt the need to do that demonstrates that you weren't really liking the game that much,
Yeah, I mean, towards the end, like, I was kind of getting sick of it. I was kind of just like, all right, I kind of want this to be over with. I want to get to, like, the end of it, finish the story up, and, like, just be done. And, like, a lot of that was because, like, I had a lot of trouble navigating that last island. I kept getting lost, even though, like, it wasn't very, like, it wasn't nearly as, like, cumbersome as Chaos Island was. But, like, I couldn't find some of the cyberspace places for, like, the longest time, to the point where I was just running around doing nothing, and I was like, all right, no one wants to watch this. I'm just gonna go fishing, get the last stuff I need, and finish this. It was purely for, like, for people watching at that point. But yeah, like, I shouldn't have had to, like, rely on that to finish it, because it I don't know, like, the end of the game just started to fall apart for me, and I just relied on that because it was like, all right, I want to be done.
And I've seen the same thing from many people, lots who said that they used fishing to skip the last island, and it's like, that's not a good thing to me.
It's not. No, it's absolutely, like...
It's like you said, Juice, it's a cop-out. It's a way to be like, well, it's bad, but you just don't have to do it. It's like,
yeah.
I could not play the game, too, because it's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I could just put the whole thing down. I guess, I'm not saying
the game is bad. It's just,
yeah,
it has those kinds of problems there that's like, it's indicative of issues.
I played about... I got most of the memory tokens the on the last island, but there came to a point where they were so stingy with them, and I was kind of sick of everything that I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go fishing and get all this stuff and also power up and do whatever. I mean, I have 550 fishing coins. Come on, like I should be using these things right at this point. So yeah, and one thing about finding stuff around the map that I guess we didn't really go too much into is obviously the game teaches you once you hit those mysteries, it unveils things on the map. Though the way that it unveils things on the map isn't indicative to exactly where you are. It's like scattered slightly. Yeah, so that bothers me. But eventually I learned to just hit as many of those things I can find and then find where the other ones are and almost like complete the entire map. Hit stuff on the way, but almost complete the entire map that way before I even start looking for everything, because I'm someone who has to reference the map a lot to remember where the heck I'm going in this game. And I have some problems with that in some other games as well, and I understand that's kind of a me thing, and people can play without maps entirely in some things, but in these levels there's so much repeating stuff and not enough big landmarks for the most part. There's like one big landmark per area that I felt like I had to keep referencing the map in order to understand where I need to go next. So I just filled out the entire map before I even started going around looking for more memory tokens and whatnot, just so I could see where the heck they are.
Yeah, I was also trying to fill out the map as soon as I could. I would basically just go from one like map area to another and just do things in between. And that actually really bothered me because you get fast travel when you fully fill out the map. And I was like, ooh, fast travel, I want that. But when you get to Chaos Island, I was trying to do that, but you can't do that. There's areas on the map you can't access, even though you can still like see stuff on the map. And so I was like spending a bunch of time trying to get to areas I couldn't get to and trying to fill out the map when I couldn't. And that was annoying to me. I did not like that.
That reminds me, is that the island with that giant drawbridge?
Yes.
Okay, so I bitched about this when I played it. That is the worst thing ever, because the game lets you run up it. And so I did that, and I was like, oh, I can use my creative movement to boost to the other side of it. That's how you do it, right?
What do you think this is, a Sonic game?
Yeah, so apparently not. Apparently there's a giant invisible wall blocking that.
My best friend, invisible wall.
Yeah, and I was like, what the hell? And then I learned you have to like, maybe there is another path. I noticed those like hexagon pillars, and I was like traveling among those. But eventually I just used a bird, which is kind of cool. I like flying around on a bird, but I didn't know what the hell. I wasn't expecting that you have to use a bird to travel to the next island.
I didn't even know you could do that, honestly.
Oh, yeah. You parry the bird coming at you, and then you're able to homing attack it, and then you do a little swing on it, and if you time it right, then you're, like, paragliding around. And you use the bird to fly you to the next island, or whatever. Like, you can do huge distances with it.
Yeah, I saw you do that on your stream, Juice. I didn't know that was in the game, and getting from island to island on Chaos was a nightmare because you could only use the railways pretty much without knowing that, and it was awful.
Yeah, and there's so much space in between them. Yeah, there's so much space in between them, and I was like, okay, how do I get to this island without this goddamn bird? Oh, I have to travel all the way over there now, and then all the way back over here. Yeah, I hated that too. So anytime I found a bird after I learned that I can do that, I was like, okay, this is way faster. I'm doing this. So I'm glad that they're there, but I wish that you kind of knew that you could do that from the start.
That would have been another thing that would have been nice for them to, show.
Yeah.
Like in like either like a small little cutscene, like with him talking to Tails, them getting attacked by the birds, and then doing it, whatever. But like, I'm starting to find out that like barely anyone knew that was a mechanic the first time around.
Yeah, I only knew because someone told me to parry the bird as was attacking you, because I kept trying to attack it, and I was like, okay, I guess I just have to deal with these things attacking me, and whatever, I'll just dodge them. And then someone in chat was like, oh no, just parry it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I started flying on it. And I was like, oh, sick. So, yeah.
That was after I stopped interacting with enemies as much as possible, so I just ignored
same.
those things.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure I just ran away from him. I was like, all right, you're nothing to me.
Which
Goodbye.
reminds me, the enemy in the second island, Ares Island, that like goes up into the air and it like pulls
Tank.
your camera and forces you to look at it. Hated that thing.
I think was that the
You mean
tank?
Fortress?
It was one of the small enemies. It wasn't a big one.
Okay.
Oh, I remember Fortress doing... Oh, can we talk about how you can't open your pause menu when you're in combat?
That is stupid.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, especially in Chaos Island when... Or whatever the island is with Fortress, because it's huge. And, like, you'll be, like, trying to run from it or whatever, and you just cannot open your... And I'm like, okay, where do I go? What the hell do I do? Where's the next question mark thing? And then I just couldn't see it because I had to deal with this giant fortress thing that was just all the way over there, or something was above me and I was nowhere near it, that I just couldn't activate my pause menu, and I was like, oh my god, man.
Oftentimes I would be like, okay, I can't pause to look at the map, so I would just run in one direction and just keep pressing it. It's like, am I far away enough now? Can I use the map, please?
Yeah, exactly. That was my exact experience. Like, oh man, because it's faster to do that to actually continue on with the gameplay loop than it is to interact with the enemies with the combat system. So
speaking of, we're on that topic a little bit. Can we just quickly talk about the UI issues in the game? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I brought a few of them up when it came to... Okay, so here's one that bugged me before I forget. So, every time you approach something, it's like, you need this many of this item left in order to use this.
Mm-hmm.
You need 2 vault keys in order to unlock this Chaos Emerald. You need whatever for the other things. I can't remember all of them, but the one that isn't like that is the gears to go into the levels. So it'll say what's required of you and not... Oh yeah, the memory tokens is the other one where it's like, okay, you have all these, you need 0 left. But the levels, just the number remains. It's like, you need 2 gears to get in here. So I got confused because all of the other language is telling me one thing, and those levels are telling me something else. Does that make sense? It's
inconsistent ways that it gives you that information, so you assume that it's the same across the board. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because all the other ones are telling you something different, and that one is that's the only one. So I was like, oh, there were levels I literally thought I couldn't enter. And yeah, like people are gonna be like, oh, just look at how many gears you have. But intuitively, I'm not thinking that way because of what the game has taught me to do. Like, go close to something. If you have enough of this thing, then you can interact with it. That was the only exception. So, yeah, and then I brought up the one when it came to not having name tags above who's talking when you're talking up to the Elder Cocos. That threw me off for like half a second. The lack of subtitles is another one. The constant blinking exclamation point to upgrade your skill points, even when you don't want to.
The menus I had a lot of issues with, where you would bring up the pause menu, and then for like a good second, for no reason, just none of your inputs would register. They just wouldn't do anything a lot of times when you would go from like one menu to another. And like, it took so many button presses to just do something in like the pause menu, like way more than it should have for no reason. A lot of stuff like that.
Elder Coco, anyone?
Oh, the Elder Coco. That's a whole other fucking thing.
All right, we'll get to that in a second. I want to go back to the menus real quick.
Sure.
When you go to whatever you want to do, you have to press A to select it, then you have to press A again to select each little thing in that menu.
Yeah.
It's just, it was very poorly designed. But yes, Elder Coco, having to upgrade every single level one at a time.
Yeah, it's weird because with the attack and defense, you don't have to do that, but with the Elder Coco, you do. And the thing that was egregious, and the reason why it reminded me of this is because of what Pariah said, where there's a delay in your inputs.
Yep.
So every single time you pull up that menu, you can't just immediately go down to increase speed. It's like, I can't select anything. I can't select, and then you can. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like what? Like why is it that slow? Is that like a programming error? I don't understand. Is that so to help like prevent mistakes in menus? I don't.
No, it was an homage to 06. They wanted you to remember the loading times.
I see. Oh
yeah, I
man.
have to assume that's probably like there was an issue with the menus, and they're like, we can't fix it, so just don't let them do anything for a second, and then they won't have the problem, or something like that. And like the Elder Cocos, it must have just been, we don't have time to put in a menu to like, how many points do you want to put into offense, and how many points do you want to put in defense? So you have to select every single individual one, and it's awful.
It's painful. Like, I shouldn't have to spend 30 minutes leveling up. Like,
yeah.
This is Sonic. We're supposed to be fast here, people. Come on, get with the program.
Yeah. You can transfer all of one to the next when it comes to speed and ring or whatever. But the other ones, it's like attack and defense you can do all at once. Speed and rings you have to do individually.
Rings,
yeah. So every time I was trying to upgrade my speed, it just like took so goddamn long, and I was like, this is counterintuitive.
You couldn't have just made a menu that's like, how many points do you want to put in? That's all it would have taken.
Like an up and down counter, that's all you would have needed? Like,
the Cocos in general are kind of whatever to me. I mean, they're there for story purposes, so I kind of understand that. But when it comes down to, first of all, the skill points, you can unlock new skills, but when it comes to increasing your stats, you have to talk to these Elder Cocos, and you got to collect these fruits and do whatever. I don't have a problem with having to collect the fruits to increase the things, but if they're gonna have a menu for the skills that you can get, couldn't you just like hit R1 or something and go to an RPG, like increase your stats? You know?
I guess there's really not that much point to having to go to the Elder Cocos to upgrade your stuff, is there?
Nope.
No.
There really isn't. Aside from like a small little story purpose, like in the very beginning of the game, it makes no difference otherwise.
Because if you have the power to learn new skills through the skill points, why don't you have the power to increase your attack and defense with this other thing? You're able to take on so much other data in the game. You're able to absorb rings. You're able to absorb the energy of Chaos Emeralds, of these skill points, of if it's all going into your hands or whatever. Why the hell can you not just... They don't explain why you can't... I mean, I don't know.
It's just another one of the major inconsistencies in this game.
It's because there was the big Korok you had to talk to in Breath of the Wild to cash in your Korok seeds.
I know, but why?
Can I tell you a funny story about that?
Sure.
I never found him either in Breath of the Wild.
Oh,
wow.
I never found him. I missed him completely, so I went through the game with base inventory and was crying the entire time.
Oh my goodness.
Awful.
Wait, does he not show up in the Lost Woods if you don't find him in the overworld?
If you don't find him near Kakariko, he does not show up in the Lost Woods.
Wow. Oh man. Okay, I didn't know that.
And having gone to Kakariko once for the story purposes, I barely ever went back.
Huh.
Yeah. I decided to climb the mountain over instead of following the road. Yep.
And you're stronger for it.
Exactly.
The only thing that I can think of, the only last thing on the gameplay side that I want to talk about is that you brought it up was kind of the lack of polish, and we kind of already went over it with the pop-in, which kind of hurts the game a lot because you can't exactly see what's all around in the world the entire time.
And it's just really ugly and unpolished looking. It just feels bad to see that everywhere.
Yeah, like you'll be running through and things just pop in, and they could have at least made it look on theme with things popping in digitally, like put some sort of cover up for it there, but no, it's kind of inexcusable. It didn't ruin the game for me or anything, but it definitely took away from me thinking that the game was like a super polished experience, you know?
Yeah, honestly, I stopped noticing the pop-in after a while because I was focused on the gameplay, but it's still not a good look.
Yeah,
I became numb to it, but it's not good.
What system did you guys play on? Because I played on PS5, which I imagine is less pop-in or faster pop-in than on the previous consoles.
I played on PC.
I played on PC.
Okay, so I imagine it's probably worse for like PS4 users and Switch users especially.
Oh, probably.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen the game on Switch. It's probably pretty rough.
Mm-hmm. And then another lack of polish, I would say, would be like I remember in some of the climbing tower sections on Island 4, where I would boost on one of those walls that you have to like climb up, or I would just go to like, you know, how you run up the walls. I would approach them, and then it would automatically make me run downwards instead of upwards.
Yes.
Did that happen to anyone?
Yeah, where they're like tagged the wrong way. So like the up makes you go down, and down makes you go up, or left and right or swift or something. Yeah, that happened to me too.
Yeah.
Same issue.
Okay. Cool. So that wasn't just me there. I didn't understand the point of that because you had to go up there. You couldn't go down and then up. At least I don't think so.
I think it was just that wall was placed incorrectly or something.
Yeah.
Also, the water in the fishing is just broken. That's really ugly for something that you just sit there and stare at.
Okay, I brought this up on stream, and everyone was like, "I didn't notice this." But you look at the shaders or whatever the hell. If you like around Sonic, it's like brighter or like more shadowy there for no reason. Did you guys notice that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
the lighting engine there is pretty broken.
I looked at that now. It like gives me goosebumps almost. I hate graphical errors like that. Where I don't know what it is, but they creep me the hell out. Some sort of like uncanny or something. But I hate that. I hate that a lot. So yeah, and other people were like, "Oh, I didn't even notice that." I'm like, "Really?
I don't know how you couldn't notice that. It's so in your face.
How did you miss it?" Yeah.
Are you blind?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Also, a lot of the animations in the game, like some animations look pretty good, but then some other animations look so bad. And certain cutscenes, like the lighting looks not great in them sometimes. Just not great, just issues in various places like that.
Mm-hmm. I've seen in a lot of the cutscenes there'll also be a shit ton of pop-in on some of the older consoles too. Like you'll be talking to Amy or something, and all of a sudden a tree will pop in front of you, which is insane.
I remember there was a specific instance in Ares when you're talking to Knuckles. It's when he's like talking by that like huge wall, and they're talking about defenses. There's a shot where it turns around and the camera pans, and you can see like part of the background and like part of the other challenges popping in at the same time, and it was really jarring that it like just really got in my way. Like I stopped paying attention to the cutscene at that point, which was probably not intended. So
yeah, definitely. If it takes you out of the experience, definitely not. I remember that the lead up to this release had even worse animations than what we got, and I remember people bitching about that a lot. And maybe it was like a beta build.
The IGN like spot did not help this game at all. Like when they first showed that out, like it did not give anybody confidence. It all looked like shit. There was even worse pop-in. Like I know that sounds like impossible, but like everything about it just looked awful, which I guess makes their like later stuff a little bit more redeeming, but at the same time it didn't inspire confidence.
It's weird how, like, when they were showing all that stuff, there were a bunch of people going, like, delay Sonic Frontiers, and they're like, no, we're not going to delay the game. We're confident in it. And then it comes out, and you're like, you should have delayed the game.
Yeah.
100%. Give them another year to work on it, and it would have been a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. Which, we don't know too much about the development cycle of this game, but I'm pretty sure we can say that it was rushed, and that, you know, even though this is a better experience than maybe some other rushed Sonic games that have come out, it still doesn't give me a lot of faith in Sega as a company, and what they, you know, kind of force upon Sonic Team, and just like the development cycles of these games in general just seems so poor, with the fact that the final boss was a bullet hell and all of this stuff. Definitely should have just delayed the game for another year, or even 6 months would have done a lot for a lot of this polish that we're talking about, you know? So,
well,
yeah.
Then again, the game's been out for several months at this point, and a lot of these issues haven't been fixed.
Yeah. Yep. Instead, we're getting free DLC? I mean, maybe you'll get patches along with that, you know, but that's another thing that we haven't really talked about, which I guess we'll get into at the end. But, you know, we're about to get into story, and, you know, right away, just before we do that, I want to say, even though we are being pretty hard on the game, I don't want it to take away from your experience with it, or even our own enjoyment of the game. Like, we may be being pretty critical of a lot of the problems that the game had, but like we said at the start of this game, I think we all kind of enjoyed it overall, you know, and had fun regardless. So it is something that I wanted to say, just because we've been bashing the game for like a straight hour, it seems. And people are probably, who like really love the game, are like, okay, I'm checked out at this point.
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah.
We criticize because we care about the game. Like, if I didn't enjoy the game, I wouldn't have these criticisms because I would have stopped playing it.
Absolutely, I wouldn't have finished if I hated it. Like
100%.
I kept pushing through. Like I found many things to love about the game.
Yeah, but I liked it a lot. But
As we've shown, there were a lot of problems with it.
Yeah. And yeah, so I guess we'll get into story now, and this is going to be probably a large section, not as large as gameplay was, because there was a lot to go over there, but I think we'll all have like interesting things to say about this too, because just like with most things in this game, we seem to all share different opinions. But there have been a lot of things that we agree on too. Okay, so story time. We're going to start off by giving our overall thoughts and feelings on the narrative progression, and then once we're finished doing that, we'll get into the greater details of, you know, what we really think about each of the character interactions and whatnot. So I guess I'll start off with my feelings on the story. I think that the story is what made me want to... I don't know what was pushing me forward more between the story and the gameplay itself, because there are parts about both that I enjoyed and parts about both that I did not enjoy. But for the most part, I think that, in my opinion, or this is my favorite Sonic story, or the most meaningful, or the one that they've put the most effort into, probably in like 12 years, 13 years, or something like that, that I could really think of. So that on its own means a lot to me, because it made me feel like I was, like the characters in the story cared about what was going on, which is really important in itself, and something that they failed at time and time again in the past. As far as, you know, you start off, Eggman uses this AI to hack this ancient system. This is nothing new for Eggman. And then he gets captured. There's a little bit of intrigue going on here. We had a prequel Knuckles animation thing, which was super cool. That kind of showed how he got sucked into the whole thing. Then our main party, I'm saying this like it's as a JRPG. You know, Sonic and gang, we're flying on the tornado. Or the cyclone, I can't remember. And we get sucked into cyberspace out of nowhere, because I guess we're chasing the Chaos Emeralds for whatever reason, right? And the Emerald Radar brings us here. We exit the cyberspace level, and immediately there's intrigue, because you have this voice in the sky that's like, you are the key. Complete, you know, you escaped from cyberspace. You're the only one to ever do this. Now you have to do everything I say, and it's Sonic's only direction to free his friends, which I won't get too into how I feel about all of that yet. But just as the narrative as a whole, it's hard to talk about the narrative as a whole, because I think the narrative as a whole is whatever. You know, I think it's all of the little things in between that make it something that's actually good for me. So, yeah, I don't know what to say past that. I think overall, though, I did enjoy it, but not because of the narrative itself, because of the characters within it who are actually taking it seriously. And the characters, to me, feel like themselves, or at least kind of where they left off, but I'll wait before getting into that. So Rakanai, you want to go? Sorry, that was very like not cohesive at all. Like
Hey,
not
man,
even a
there's
little bit.
Hey, it's fine. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Overall, for me, the story wasn't super integral to keep pushing me forward. I enjoyed the gameplay loop enough to keep going. I didn't really care for Amy's story all that much. I loved Tails' story. I think it was probably my favorite out of all of them. I enjoyed Sage. I didn't like all the interactions with her, especially the ones where she was like, "Yeah, there's no point in telling you what the hell's going on because you're not gonna be able to do anything." And it's like, you could just give me some exposition, please. But there just was none. And then Knuckles was just, more Knuckles, which was good. And I think they did a really good job with Knuckles. They actually brought him back to form instead of being the big stupid idiot anymore. He actually had a lot more depth to him. So that was kind of nice. And then Tsundere Eggman at the end was just probably my favorite part. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Like, it wasn't anything too special, but like it wasn't my main reason for continuing through the game.
Okay. And how about you, Pariah?
I did not like the story pretty much at all. I thought it was kind of bad for various reasons that we'll get into, but like the overall narrative plot is very weak to me because not much happens throughout most of the game. It's like throughout the first 80% of the game is just like teasing, oh, what happened long ago, and they just never tell you. They just keep teasing forever, and you very quickly figure out what happened long ago, but then they finally tell you at the end of the game, and it's like, okay, that's what happened. Sure, I'm not particularly invested. I don't really care that much. And then it just kind of ends, and I didn't think it had a particularly strong, impactful ending, and the characters throughout the story, I really didn't like. I have a very uncommon opinion in the Sonic community. I don't like how Ian Flynn writes the Sonic series for various reasons. The characters, to me, when he writes them, they don't feel like the characters. They feel like his versions of the characters, which it's not what I'm looking for. A lot of the dialogue, I didn't like how it was done and various things. And the individual character stories also really didn't do much of anything for me. So I didn't like the story. Please don't hate me.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
There are definitely parts of it that were not fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you when it comes to the overall narrative stuff, for sure, because it just, like you said, it just teases what the heck is going on, and it gives you, like, these little snippets in between the character stories, like, there was once an ancient civilization, they look like chaos, that's interesting. You get the egg memos, and you pretty much piece together most of it, but not exactly what happened, which you have to wait until Island 4, where it's a huge lore dump, like, the pacing of it is super weird, and then from there, it's just, okay, now it's the run to the finish line kind of deal. Once the main antagonist is revealed, as if that was supposed to be, like, the big secret. I mean, like, you didn't know that was going to be the main antagonist, that thing in the sky, but there was some intrigue going into it. The whole thing kind of felt like some sort of mystery, but was the mystery ever really enough? It's kind of a hard thing to put into words.
Yeah, I don't think the mystery had a strong payoff, and there's not a lot of progression of the mystery. Like Rakanai said, there's many scenes where, like, Sonic and Sage are like, Sonic's like, hey, let me help you, and she's like, no, and that's the scene, and then nothing progressed, and that's most of the game.
They do that so many times. Like, she's just like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Well, even if I tell you, you're not going to be able to do anything about it, so why should I bother?
Yeah.
Anytime that happens in games, it pisses me the hell off. Like, I could liken it to the original Destiny, like Destiny 1. They did a lot of that shit, and it's frustrating.
And I know what they were doing with, like, Sage. You know, she was eventually gonna open up, but they dragged it out for way too long. There was way too little happening for way too much of the story.
Yep. It wasn't until Island 4 when Sonic was putting himself in mortal peril by getting more corrupted that like she started to finally realize, all right, I kind of need to rely on this guy because he seems like he knows what he can do.
Yeah, I agree there. Though Sage, which this is also kind of a polarizing opinion because a lot of people are just whatever for Sage. Sage is actually my favorite character since Shadow. So,
Wow.
but that's I know that's a me thing, and it's because like a character learning how like the power of I guess emotions and communication and those superpowers is probably the most important thing to me in life, which is why it's like it's really cool to see. And I know it was done in like a really rushed and weird way, but it was explained by her being like this AI program, and I'll get into that later. But yeah, even though they kind of messed up like the first like half of Sage's story, I actually really enjoyed her. So, but yeah, I understand not everyone is the same with me on that.
Like, I'll agree with you. I did like her progression. I just think it happened too fast, too quick after we got a whole bunch of nothing in the beginning from it. Like, had they spaced it and paced it out better, I think it would have had a lot better effect.
I agree. I guess that in concept, it is what I really like more than what they actually executed on, you know?
Yeah, I felt it was very forced, her arc and what they tried to do with it. It just didn't feel like there was enough with her to get her to the point they were trying to get her to. Kind of similar to Chip in Sonic Unleashed, where they try to do a thing and the character's just not really strong enough to make it work in the way that they want it to. I don't think so, at least.
Yep, I can agree wholeheartedly on that one.
Yeah. I think what it is for me is that the only way that they could explain that away is what they did, and even still, it's not going to have as high of a payoff as if things were paced through correctly. Was that obviously you see her learning how people communicate with each other. You know what? Let me start from the beginning.
Yeah, we should get into things more in depth, probably.
Yeah, the reason why I like her, right? Just in general, if we start from the beginning, right, we go to the egg memos, just because we're already talking about Sage, I guess. And maybe this is me reading too much into it, but I see this whole like family dynamic in Eggman as something that is shown to us through Maria, right? Like we get some of those egg memos of Eggman felt like he wasn't being paid attention to. He never really had a strong family dynamic to our knowledge. His grandfather tried to kill them all, even though after he looked up to them. There's always this like really poor sense of feelings and family, and so, and of course this is Ian Flynn, and this kind of shows up in the comics as well with Tinker, I believe, when he has his alter ego or whatever. But creating this character who is actually a character who Eggman can see himself in as almost like a daughter was and how she just wanted an actual family dynamic almost felt like it was Eggman wanting the same thing that she wanted but not being able to express it or understand. Like both of them were kind of learning the same lesson at once, just one had the story arc and the other one didn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's definitely what they were going for, clearly. For me, it wasn't working. It just wasn't done strong enough in a way. Like, there's not nearly enough scenes between Eggman and Sage where we see those feelings in both of them developing. Like, they just kind of come out of nowhere, and it's very rushed, like, the progression of Eggman starting to feel like Sage is his daughter. There was just not nearly enough there for me because there's really not that many cutscenes in the game, like story-wise overall.
Yeah,
like you don't spend much time with Eggman in general,
which is also another weird decision. Like you've got the main antagonist of the entire series stuck in cyberspace for a majority of this game, having very little impact on it. It's just, it was weird.
I think a lot of people look at the scene of Sage looking at Egg, or like reminiscing on Eggman about those memories with that sad song playing as really funny. Like I've heard that opinion a lot of times.
That's not a good scene.
Yeah, but I actually didn't mind it because to me it's after Sage is watching how Sonic communicates with his friends and understanding that that's kind of what love is, right? Intuitively. So even though it's the only interactions that she it's like the fact that it's sad because it's the only interactions that she had with Eggman, where these things, these little signs of love that Eggman is showing her, and she's seeing that in him. You know what? So I'm kind of looking at it from that perspective, not because it's like I'm looking at it as if it's sad because that's what she sees as love from her father. You know what I mean? Or those very small interactions. And so, because that's from her perspective. It's not like, I don't look at it as if it's for us. I look at it as if it's from her, an AI program, learning what that is. Yeah, so that's why I actually like that scene. But, yeah.
I just thought that scene, like, because there was so little with Eggman and Sage, it's like, here are the 2 cutscenes that you had seen previously with these 2 characters interacting. It's like, yeah, I remember these cutscenes. Like,
yeah, they happened 5 minutes ago. Yeah,
thanks for the flashback.
She's reminiscing about her times with Eggman, but there was not nearly enough times to make that work for her to, you know, think back on all the fond memories from earlier today.
Yeah, because, like, I don't know. For me, it wasn't fond memories. It was the fact that that's what she sees as love. Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's what makes it sad to me. That's why it was like, oh, that actually kind of hits a little instead of it just like purely being funny. Like when I think about it retrospectively, it's, you know, but I totally agree in the execution of it all and how funny that is and how it's like, oh, a flashback of something that happened 5 minutes ago. Like, yeah, and the cutscenes themselves are like every cutscene between the 2 is just them standing next to each other, except for one time where she like pushes some helicopters to the side or whatever.
That's like every cutscene in the game is just characters standing around talking.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, and then obviously. Okay, before we get into like the ending or whatever, what are your thoughts on each of the character interactions? Rakanai, you said you didn't like Amy's story. Is there any particular reason why?
It just didn't really. It fit Amy's character, like it fit like her, like I guess her girlishness, her like being invested in love and all that stuff. It just didn't hit for me. Like finding out that the Coco were like the remnants of the Chaos people. I don't even remember if they had a name.
The Ancients.
On it now. The Ancients. All right. So Eris, got it. But yeah, just like none of it just hit for me. I was just like, all right, Amy, you're trapped. I'm trying to help you, but you're just off trying to help this one Coco reunite with its love. I feel like we have more pressing things to worry about. So that one just didn't really hit well with me.
Okay, and Pariah, why didn't you like it? Because you've gone into talking about why you don't, or like that you don't like Ian Flynn's writing for these characters, that you feel like it's his versions of them, but could you go into that in detail with like Amy, for example?
Yeah, that is the main reason I did not like what they did with Amy, because like Sonic and Amy, and this just also applies to like the general tone of the story, everyone is so weird in how they behave in this game in particular. Like everyone is so like melancholy and somber about everything for no particular reason. They just get to this island and they, you know, get split up from each other. And then Sonic and Amy are having these like really heartfelt conversations with each other out of nowhere, pretty much. Like Sonic and Amy in the games haven't ever really interacted with each other like this before, ever. Sonic doesn't really get that sentimental with people a lot of the time. He's, usually pretty chill about things and he'll just take whatever situation with a smile. But here he's all like, "Don't worry, Amy, I won't let anything happen to you." It's like, what? This is not how these characters talk to each other. Like, there was a lot of weird stuff like that in the story for me. And you go, Rakanai.
I was going to say, it very much felt like they were pulling from the Archie comics, because there was a lot of that in those. Sonic, like, actually grew over time to, like, console all of his friends, including Amy, which, like, was kind of the reason I sort of liked this, because I love those comics to death. But I could see where it definitely does not fit with Sonic how he has been in the games at all.
Yeah, it's like the Archie Sonic and like the IDW Sonic, like that's Ian's Sonic, that's how he writes him, and that's fine, but that's not what Game Sonic is. And he just comes in with the way that he writes the characters, and now suddenly they've transformed into his versions of them when that's not what they were. In the exact same way that with Sonic and Colors, Sonic Colors, all the characters completely transformed into different people there. And his versions are definitely better than what they were throughout the 2010s. But it still just doesn't feel right to me. It's just like Sonic doesn't say things like this. And lots of the characters, just the dialogue, the way that they talk, the way they interact with each other, it just feels wrong to me to hear the characters acting like this out of nowhere with no character growth leading to this. Like, if you look at any previous Sonic game, whenever Amy shows up, Sonic's like, "Yeah," and he gets out of there, or, something.
Run away!
Yeah, and, that's not a particularly great relationship for the two characters to have, but that is their relationship. And this game, and it just pretends like that's not their relationship, and they're super tight and super close, and they have these heartfelt conversations, and it's just like, I don't like it.
Yeah, I do agree. I wouldn't say that I don't like it, but I do agree with you that it kind of comes out of nowhere, especially from Game Sonic. And especially with what we're used to in the last decade, right? I feel like that this game in general tries to... It feels like it's playing ketchup and mustard. No, just kidding. That was hilarious. Ketchup and the last, like... It's like trying to explain everything that's happened in all of the Sonic lore and, like, push forward as if... It's like, woo, like, and we're, like, right here, right? We're at this part of the funnel. And then eventually we're going to be at the liquid that falls out of the funnel. Does that make sense? Like, we're putting all of this stuff into a funnel, and then it's coming out, and this thing is now Sonic Frontiers. That's kind of how I felt about this entire game story and its characters. It just feels like it's playing catch-up for the last 15 years of not having what I would consider to be good character interactions or character growth or anything like that, and it's just trying to explain everything away, like, really, really quickly, instead of actually having the character growth that they needed to get here,
Yeah, and I really don't like that, because if you want to get to a place where Sonic and Amy are closer together, that's a really good opportunity to tell a story that could be really good, and we're just like, forget that, just pretend that it happened, or whatever, or pretend that this is how the characters have interacted with each other for the past 20 years when it's not. And like, the characters don't feel like the characters to me. When Sonic says things, I'm like, Sonic would not say that. That Sonic doesn't talk like that so many times throughout the game.
Yeah, I guess that it doesn't bother me as much because I look at it and I'm like, oh, I actually like the things that are coming out of his mouth, but it does also feel like too much in a lot of cases. Like, I'll be listening to some of the things he's saying, and I'm like, when the hell has Sonic ever been this much of, like, a shoulder to cry on, or this much, like, he's never had this much to say in situations like this. It's just, it hasn't been in his character. He hasn't grown to this level. He hasn't matured to this level, you know what I mean? So I totally get that. But I guess because of the fact that they're trying to just, like, play catch up and then move forward from here, I'm like, I guess I'm going to accept this as the thing that these characters are. Because, one, I don't know if it's just, like, because I've been, or, like, the characters have been treated like garbage, in my opinion, for so long, that I'm like, okay, I can kind of ignore what happened before and just ignore the inconsistencies to a bit and then just move forward from here, or what, and kind of like fill in the puzzle pieces. But I agree with you in the sense that I would like to see the actual progression that we've gotten to this point. But I disagree with you in saying that that you don't like the character, which, I mean, whatever, right? But now I actually like the way that they're handled in this game.
Yeah, that's fine. That's just us disagreeing. Personally, I don't like the way they're handled now. Like,
yeah,
and that's just my taste in writing and character and stuff, and how the Sonic series has been and how it used to be and how it is now. I just personally think I liked it more before than what we currently have. What we have now is definitely better than what we had through the 2010s, but better doesn't mean good to me, so I'm just not happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, the stuff on the top of the trash can is better than the stuff on the bottom of the trash can, right? But it doesn't mean it's not trash. Not that I'm comparing this story to trash, because I actually like the characters, but you know what I mean. I totally get what you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason why I felt that this fit Amy's character is, I mean, I did an entire Amy character analysis, and the thing that I ran away with was that her superpower is essentially being a normal girl who can change the world with her interactions with other people. And that's what I see as the power of love, like caring enough to go out of your way, no matter what, to actually change something. And when I saw the way that Amy was interacting with the Cocos, and how, I want Sonic's help to do this, even though I don't really think that was even necessary, and it was mainly for gameplay reasons, the whole Sonic helping thing. I like that she's going out of her way to change the lives of individuals in the story, you know what I mean? And then she ends by saying that I just saw a love that transcended time. I believe in that power, which makes sense to me because that's how I saw her in Sonic Adventure 1. You don't do things like the things that she was doing, and I don't know, I just relate the two very easily. So, I mean, my mind is like blanking on this a little bit. Obviously, it's a lot more cohesive in the script that I wrote, but she ends by saying that I believe in that power. I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna go do those things that I'm good at now, by changing the lives of other people, by showing them that I care, by helping others. That's what Amy does, because she cares. Because she has a lot of that love to give. And that's why I liked how it ended. I mean, all three of the stories kind of end the same way, where it's like, I'm going to go do this other thing for a while. But that makes sense to me. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that fits for Amy's character, certainly. I felt that she's way overly sappy and sentimental in how she goes about these things. Like, when I think of Amy, especially, in like the 2000s game, she's like spunky. And here she's just like love and beauty and blah, blah, blah the whole time, which I didn't love. But also, like, that whole deal is like, that's just already where Amy is as a character. That's what she was already doing in many previous games. So I don't know why we have a whole character arc just to get her to where she already was. It was strange to me.
That's kind of how I feel about the three characters, but it also feels like we're getting back on track to them doing the
true.
things,
Amy did nothing for the past decade.
Yeah. So do you have any further thoughts on Amy, Rakanai?
No, I think I've said all I need to.
Okay.
I did not care for her story out of the three. Knuckles, on the other hand, I thought they handled pretty well. I thought it was a much better departure from what they've had done for like the past 10 years, making him just a muscle-bound idiot when he's obviously much more complex than that. I liked how they did a focus on more of his military background. I thought that was actually kind of nice touch from him kind of failing in not Frontiers, in Forces. Too many Fs. To like, try and lead like all of that with Sonic missing. and like you can see him like try to reflect on all that, like use that knowledge to help the Cocos through his adventure. And I liked a lot of that. Unfortunately, just a lot of the story elements that went around it just didn't hit all that well either. Unfortunately,
A lot of the story elements that were around it.
yeah, like I mentioned like the big wall earlier. Like you had mentioned, this was like for defense. Like they definitely used this as kind of like a staging ground, but they didn't really go into much about that. They showed like a little bit of a clip, I guess you could say, like of the past, but you don't really see a whole lot. You just see them getting bombarded from, I guess space, if I remember correctly. Like I'm kind of blanking on it a little bit.
The end just shoots lasers,
telling you what's happening in the story, and we gotta save that for the last stretch of the game.
Exactly.
Right.
Like it just it suffered from them like refusing to give you like context, unfortunately. But him as a whole, I thought was pretty decent.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember what Knuckles' deal was. I haven't thought about the game very much since I played it when it first came out. What was his thing about?
So I just finished writing a script on Knuckles, and I ended it with this sequence. So his whole thing is he has a fear of tackling the new, right? And this is stuff that, I mean, I'll go into it when I really talk about it, but it pretty much ends with him saying that he's alone, he's the last of his race, and that, you know, these things getting wiped out reminds him of what happened to the echidnas.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that, you know, he's going to go out and live a little more because he's jealous of Sonic's lifestyle, because they're pretty much exact opposites in how they tackle life.
Are they? Because Knuckles just leaves the Master Emerald all the time to go on adventures.
Now he does, but again, this is like what I was talking about, where it's like, oh, we're getting back. It's like we went backwards to like right at the end of SA2 is how this feels to me. Like every single character feels like we went whoop, like we're over here, and but then they like try to fit all this stuff in between, like, and try to like again like put it all into this freaking funnel, and now we have this version of these characters. So yeah,
I remember reading the Sonic Forces comic, the prequel comic that came out before that game, where it had Knuckles guarding the Master Emerald before the story started, and I was like, "That's funny, Ian. You're trying to pretend that Knuckles still does that." Because when was the last time we even saw the Master Emerald in a Sonic game?
Yeah. So for me, because this is like fresh on my mind, right? I was talking about how Knuckles' biggest fear is like lack of security, which I've gone into. Like, he basically starts off born into his duty without knowing why, doesn't even bother to learn about why until Sonic Adventure 2, but he was forced to go out on a journey and experience new things because of the fact that the Master Emerald was shattered. At the end of that game, he's like, maybe it's best that I don't know why I'm doing this, because probably of what Tikal showed him, right? He's like, I don't know if I want to know my history. I just want to keep doing the same thing because it's where I feel the most secure and peaceful, right? In Sonic Adventure 2, he shows character development by literally shattering the Emerald himself, even if it means that he has to go on another adventure. And I don't think he would have done that if it wasn't for his progress in Sonic Adventure 1. So he goes on to another adventure, and then he actually gains friendships. Like, he learns to trust the people around him, which is another big part of Knuckles' character. So because of his lack of security, it leads him to not want to go out and live, right? Because his security is tied to his duty. That's his entire livelihood. That's one of, like, our core human fears, is lack of security. And that's shown in the writing of Knuckles. So when you get to his story here, you start, and I mean, in Heroes, he's willing to, like, go out. So I feel like that's kind of where his character development ended, right? It was in Heroes, the start of Heroes. But in this game, it's like, what the hell happened in between, right? That's what I'm talking about, where it feels like we're playing catch up now. Or they're just like, I don't exactly know. But it feels like it's closer to who Knuckles is as a person, because it's going back to, okay, I want to not just protect the Master Emerald, I want to go out on adventures, I want to experience the world. Because if it wasn't for the skills that he learned on those adventures, he wouldn't be able to protect the Master Emerald or his home to the same level as he does. His entire gameplay is pretty much built off of exploring the new, digging, climbing, gliding around to see. I don't think that's unintentional either. So when you get to the end and it's like, oh yeah, Sonic, I'm jealous of you or whatever, and Sonic's like, go live a little, like do this or that, and Knuckles is like, okay, maybe I will. That feels like it's the actual, like, where we left off with the character than whatever's happened in the last 20 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, personally, I'm not a fan of that idea of Knuckles leaving the Master Emerald for various reasons. But if you're gonna do it, okay, that's a fine way to go about it. But again, there was no build up to that at all. Like in Sonic Frontiers, he's just like standing around talking with Sonic, having some conversations, and now he has this major life-changing realization that is, again, I feel it's pretty forced in how it's done. And I think a lot of this just comes from the issues with like the game not allowing for a lot of storytelling, because the game requires it to be like a big open world where you can just run around and do whatever. So it can't have like a really like focused story where things are moving forward and there's a lot of plot progression and cutscenes and stuff. So there's not a lot of time to develop these kinds of things, and there's not a lot of events that lead to these kinds of realizations for the character. He's just feeling this way because he saw some Cocos that think they're defending their home or whatever. And I just don't think that's a very strong way to get that idea across.
Yeah, it's probably not the strongest. He just gets reminded that his entire race was wiped out because he sees the Cocos race get wiped out, and because they have similar technology, and he's trying to figure out, like, where his stuff came from. He's like, oh, those defenses look like the same ones on my island. They must have used this or that, you know what I mean? So there's like some connection there, but it's not given enough breathing room.
Yeah. That's really all I have to say about it.
Mm-hmm. How about
sorry, I'm gonna be like confrontational about almost all of these points.
Oh no, I get you.
Nah, you're good.
Yeah, I'm just saying the stuff that I was writing my character analysis scripts, and then I played Frontiers, and I was like, oh, these like perfectly fit into exactly what I was writing about. You know what I mean? It felt like Ian Flynn, when writing these characters, was like, ah, yes, these are the characters that I mean, I don't know exactly how to explain that, but it feels like he understands the characters, or at least their struggles and their progression, more than a lot of writers for the character do, or like what was established before. It's just like this huge gap of information that's happened in between. Exactly. Well, I mean, we've said it 1,000 times, right? There's just like their progression to get to that point isn't there. So
don't know if I'd agree that Ian understands the characters 100%.
At least my interpretations of them. I feel like that's just my interpretation, right? Because like when I was writing, I was like, oh, this fits into exactly what I'm writing about here. I think everyone will interpret the characters differently, right?
Yeah, especially in the case of Sonic, you know, it's been handled by so many different people doing different things with the character that like one person's idea of what the character is going to be different than another person's. Because I've never gotten any of this like fear stuff out of Knuckles looking at how he is in the games ever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you interpret it that way, then, you know, that's fine.
Indeed. Do you have any extra thoughts on this, Rakanai?
No, I've said all I need to on Knuckles.
Cool. How about Tails, since he was your favorite one?
Okay, so Tails, yeah, I really, really liked Tails because it starts out like he has been for like the past 10 years. He's grown confident. He's doing his thing. He's like, all right, Sonic, thank you for helping me. All right, let's see what we can do to, try and figure this out now that
Well, that's
we're
not the
both
past
together.
10 years. That was 20 years ago. The past 10 years has been Tails being a coward, doing nothing, holding his
Really?
Wii U gamepad.
I mean, yeah, you kind of see that in Forces a bit,
And
but
Unleashed. And Colors.
I
guess
don't
he
know
does some stuff in Lost World.
I don't know if I agree necessarily in Colors. I feel like he's like still not necessarily a coward. I'd say he's like
Not cowardly in that game, but he doesn't do much of anything.
fair enough. Anyways,
Sorry.
yeah, no, you're good. So he's just like on this tear, and then like he starts to break down, like as if he's actually like being a detriment to Sonic. Like, and I really liked that they kind of showed that first character. It kind of humanized him a little bit more in my eyes. It made him seem like, all right, I'm doing all these things, but I'm always constantly being saved by Sonic. Why does he keep me around? Why am I here? It spoke to me quite a bit. And then that like little heart to heart talk that they had towards the end of it, like Sonic reassuring him that he's like come a long way, even if he doesn't feel like that himself, and then deciding to, go off into the world again. It kind of does like loop back to what like we've been talking about. Like they've kind of regressed back to where they were 20 years ago, where Tails saved Station Square, and then he's a lot more confident in Adventure 2. But it was nice to see him in a more humanized like state instead of like what we've seen like in the last 10-15 years of him just being Sonic's sidekick. Oh, I can push buttons. So I really liked that about it.
Yeah, it feels like they've regressed, but also progressed without evidence of said progress based off of things that we have seen in the last 20 years. And that's that. I can say that for like every single character in this game, I think. I personally also enjoyed Tails, probably for the same reason. But this is when I realized that this was happening. I guess because it's not as on the nose with the other two. With Tails, it is. It's like, oh, I am trying to play catch up with all of this stuff that I like. We're referencing this game and this game and this game and this game and this game. It's almost like the writers talking to the audience there. It's like, yeah, we understand that you didn't like the way that he was written before. It didn't make any sense based off of what he did before. Here's how we're trying to explain that, right? But I think it's done in a... It's like, what other path could you really take with it? I don't know. You either ignore all of that stuff that happened in between with him being a coward, or you do this, and I think that this was the right way to go with it, and to kind of move forward with there and just call him inconsistent, and hopefully his, he works on his self-doubt, because that's always kind of been Tails' problem, with self-doubt. And even though there are parts about us that are our demons that we conquer as we tackle things and life goes on, they're always going to creep back into our lives at inopportune times. So that's kind of how I see that. How about you, Pariah?
I think Tails' story is the strongest of the character stories because it, instead of just ignoring what happened for the past 10 years and just doing whatever, it is actually working off of that stuff, because Tails is a mess of a character, like many Sonic characters at this point, where, yeah, throughout the adventure games, he was building his confidence and becoming more capable, and then suddenly out of nowhere, he's like cowardly and useless again. And so then this game, it's like, okay, how do we make that work in some way? How do we make sense of that? And so this approach to like Tails, growing, but also having like doubts about himself, almost like imposter syndrome. It's like, okay, that's not a bad way to go about that. Again, I think it could have been done a little bit better. Like, all these character stories are reliant on like a Coco that like makes the character think about themselves because of similarities, which I did not think was a very good way to go about these character stories, but that's what they did. And it is kind of weird because, like, what do? You could just ignore the past, 10 years of how the character's been written and just pick up where he left off in the older games where he is confident and can do things on his own, and we just go forward from there. But, I guess you don't want to ignore the past, even though they do that all the time in Sonic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, I wish that they did this with the other two characters and kind of move forward from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also, again, with Tails, it's like, this is kind of just like getting back to the starting line with him, similar to Amy, where it's like he was brought down in the 2000 or 2010s games, and so now we're just like, he's back to where he was, at the end of SA2 and throughout like Heroes and various games around that time. And that's his character arc. We're back to where we were before. We have recovered from bad writing. Which, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about this entire game in a nutshell. And it's just trying to figure out where they're going to go from here, That's what I'm most curious of. I don't know what the heck the DLC is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be outside of the island where you play as these three characters, or if it's going to be while they're, like, inside of Sonic or whatever the hell, or inside of Cyberspace.
Inside Sonic is a totally different thing, man. We can't talk about that.
All right, yeah, let's look at some Googles.
That's Sonic Dreams collection.
But yeah, it just makes me curious as to where they're gonna go with the characters from here. Like, how do we push them forward? Because they set all three of them up to go on their own adventures to tackle these insecurities that they have, and to... It's almost as if now the thing, like, we went backwards to this area in the Sonic timeline as far as the character progression goes. Some of the stuff was explained, some of it wasn't, and now maybe this DLC or whatever these characters' adventures are going to happen in the future is going to, like, we're finally going to see where they should have been in the last, like, all that time when they were completely different characters. I mean, I hope so. I mean, I don't know what else you do. Right? Unless you just keep them the same forever.
I don't know. I don't know what they're planning to do with the characters. One thing before we get off of Tails I want to talk about in particular is the references in all the dialogue and just the game in general. I hated that so much. That was so annoying to me. Because it's like what you said, Juice, how it feels like the writer is talking directly to the audience. Yeah. That's a bad thing to me, because it feels like the characters are in character having a conversation about the story, and then that stops and a character goes, "Remember Neo Metal Sonic? Okay, back to the story now." Yeah, totally. That's what I mean. That's what I keep saying it, where it feels like they're just trying to remind us of everything that's happened and trying to... Exactly, it's like putting it all into a funnel. And this is what we're moving forward from here. Like, it's been all mixed in a bowl, and then you just keep going. And I cut you off. Continue. Yeah, I mean, I was basically just going to complain more. I just think it's so annoying how there's, like, constant references to previous games all over the place. Like, when Sonic and Tails were having that conversation, and Tails was like, I can't do it. I was like, Sonic's going to fucking talk about Station Square. I know he's going to. And then he did, and I was like, of course he did. Because you gotta reference things, and it's like, you can talk about the past and the history of the series and make it feel like natural and organic. That's not what this was. This was very forced, like, we're just gonna shove in references so that way it's like, hey, it's thing from previous Sonic game, isn't that cool? This thing is more powerful than Dark Gaia, or it reminds me of the Mystic Ruins, or blah blah. I hated it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt like if you did it once or twice, it would have been fine, but it's all over the game. You know what I mean? And it just felt it didn't feel natural. Exactly. It just felt like the writers talking to the audience, almost trying to catch up for players who haven't played those Sonic games. But it's also trying to signal that these things existed. I don't know.
I just kind of took it as fan service because, the previous writers didn't know anything about Sonic, admittedly. So I think that this was just like, look, things from Sonic. I know about these things, so it's in good hands, I guess, is what that was trying to communicate.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It almost feels like I don't want to make a reference to Stockholm syndrome, but that's kind of what I'm getting at when I think about this game's writing in comparison to the last 15 years of writing in the series, where it's like, oh, this is what this is what Sonic is, and it's like, yeah, I think it's partially fan service, and it's partially like, is it though? Is it really like trying to get like new Sonic fans or Sonic fans who have played the Sonic games for the last 15 years but don't know the history of Sonic? Is it like really trying to get them more invested in that? I don't really know. I can't say what the goals of the writers were entirely, but it's probably a mix of some of that stuff.
Anyway, do we want to go on to, I guess, Sage's story now? Because she's the next... Well, I guess the fourth island is, like, the main plot stuff, if we want to get into that.
Sure. So, I don't really know how I feel about any of this, I guess. I haven't, like, fully formulated my thoughts on it, just because I don't feel one way or the other about it. I've heard a lot of people say that the Chaos Emeralds or whatever coming from space kind of ruins the mystique of the series for them, but I didn't get that impression. I guess I can understand it. There's a lot that's not explained, and then there's a lot that's also over-explained all at once. Like, this ancient entity called the End blew up this ancient's planet who had this technology, and the Chaos Emeralds picked up on the Master Emerald, which are attracted to each other. That's always been a thing in the lore, and because of that, they landed there. But why is there a Master Emerald on Earth?
That is weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is there a Master Emerald on other planets? Because now you're getting into comic shit, right? Like, now This is completely out of whack for what this series is typically used to in its games. So they land there, and then the End followed them there, and so they sacrificed themselves or whatever, and trapped it in cyberspace. And Sonic was the key of unlocking that thing from cyberspace, because in order to save his friends from cyberspace, he also needed to save the End from cyberspace, right? Is that, like, pretty much...
Yeah.
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 And for some reason, these ancients had technology to harness the Chaos Emerald's true power as if it's their resting place. It's kind of referenced a few times in the game where it's like, it's almost as if these things were built for the Chaos Emeralds or whatever. I don't know if the Chaos Emeralds came from somewhere else before, or if they were just strictly on that planet, or... Again, there's a lot of questions. I feel like it makes me question more things than answer, but they're more specific questions. So yeah, I don't really know. I don't care one way or the other too much about it. Do you guys have any feelings about it?
It felt very inconsequential. Like, which is like a really weird thing to say considering it was the main story. But like, all of the stuff with the ancients just felt like it was shoehorned in, like, to try to, like, make sense of all the ancient technology that was there. And yeah, it was interesting to see them, like, running from the End, landing on Earth because they found the Master Emerald, and, like, their stuff was reacting to it. But, like, I didn't care about any of it. Like, it didn't do anything for me, especially with, like, the very lackluster ending. Like, even if you, like, played on normal or hard, like, either one, like, oh, good, you destroyed this thing that's supposed to have been, like, ultra powerful and a menace in, like, a matter of minutes. Congratulations.
Yeah, the ending has problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same place generally as Rakanai with that stuff. Like, this is what I was saying before about, like, I don't think the mystery was paid off very well. It's like, oh, the Chaos Emeralds are from space. Okay, that doesn't really change anything or mean anything. We
Yeah.
now know where they're from, and that doesn't really matter. It's kind of cool having an explanation for why chaos is the way that it is. That's kind of neat. Um, but the actual like lore building stuff, I was just like, okay, whatever. It's another ancient civilization that was wiped out. Chaos Emeralds, blah blah blah. Done it all before, seen it all before. Revelations to the story that don't really matter very much. And then like it feels to me like there's no stakes in the story. Like there's no urgency to anything, because it's just like the characters just happen to arrive on this island, and it's only because Sonic's friends get pulled into cyberspace that this is even a problem. Like, if they weren't here, nothing would happen. We'd all just be hunky-dory, and there's no like push to rush and get this done and save the world. Most of the game, you're just trying to save your friends, and then at the end, it's like, oh, and by doing that, you released an ancient evil thing, and then you beat it. The end.
Yeah, had that ancient evil thing, been explained a little bit earlier in the story, like we've said, or like, shown to be like incredibly powerful earlier in the story, it might have had more of an impact, but it just didn't happen.
I mean, it was shown like here and there with destroying those defenses like it was nothing and kind of wiping out the ancients on the planets. So I'll give it credit for that, but there wasn't really much until that fourth island at all that we really understood the power of what it is. We still don't understand exactly what it is, though. I saw some interviews that was like the end is some random force of nature, essentially, and what people see of it is their interpretation of death. And so when Sonic sees it, he sees a giant moon, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it is. It's like incomprehensible. Think of like Gygus or something from Earthbound, I guess. I guess the moon symbolizes death in some cultures. I don't know if it's the same one that this game is really going for, but I guess that's why before, when all the characters were together, you didn't see a moon, you just saw like nothing in the sky, even though that doesn't make any sense because Sage is with you in the end. So there's inconsistencies there too, so they don't really fully explain it. And it does kind of seem to come out of nowhere, but I kind of picture it as some sort of nihilistic force, which to me seems to be the antithesis of who Sonic is as a... I don't want to say it's the antithesis of who he is as a character, but it is kind of like... Sonic's entire thing is, and I said it at the beginning of this podcast, but holding on to his principles until the end, essentially, and that I feel like he's always kind of been that way. And, this goes into your video as well, but does that moon not... So if like, the way that it talks to Sonic, it's almost as if, like, nothing he does matters at all because everything is going to be wiped out by existence. And the game kind of has themes of, even if everything will end, I will, I'm going to bring peace to it anyway because that's just what I want to do. It's like I'm following my principles, and that end, or the end, is the antithesis to that, right? That's the way I see it.
I interpreted the whole thing with the end and the general story, especially the way that Sonic and Sage talk multiple times, that it's about like hopelessness, because Sage is always like, you have 0% chance of saving whatever, or defeating it, or anything like that, and then chances are getting better or whatever, but it's still ultimately like it's constantly being drilled into the player's head that like there's nothing you can do, it's impossible, there's no way to do it, and whatever. And then you get to the end, and it's all going like, you can't defeat me, I am almighty, whatever. And, Sonic is like, well, I'll show you I can conquer anything. Like, that's kind of what I pulled from what it was going for with the main story. Which I guess that could work well, but I don't think it worked very well in Frontiers. because it's just a character standing around talking. Like Sonic, like Sage is like, "You can't do it," and Sonic goes, "Yes, I can," and that's the scene, and that happens multiple times, and then you get to the end, and the end is going, "You can't do it," and then you do, and it's not particularly like impactful or epic because it's just a moon going, "Grr, I'm gonna get you," and it wasn't properly like built up throughout the story. It was just like teased, like evil thing, and then it shows up and you beat it, and what you didn't build up to the finale enough. The finale didn't go big enough and hard enough to make that feel really emotionally impactful for me.
I didn't find it emotionally impactful at all. I'm just like thinking about it like at like later, and I guess like hopelessness is a huge thing, but I mean it's kind of like the same thing, right? Nihilism, and it because doesn't it say no matter what, like even if you defeat me here, I will come back in like another form and do this anyway, so that it doesn't matter regardless. And like Sonic's principles directly stand in the face of that, so he does it anyway because he holds onto life dearly and protects it. I mean, and I don't even think that the end is like an evil entity. I think it's just a force of nature, right? It just
I
just
get
does
that same thing out of it.
Yeah.
It just
not the payoff wasn't there. Yeah.
It wasn't executed well enough to.
And probably a big part of that is because they probably had to not do the actual ending that they wanted to do. Because another part of the story that I thought was incredibly lame was when you're doing the fourth island and Sonic is like fully corrupted, and then all the friends show up and they're like, "We'll save you, Sonic." And I was like getting excited in that part because I was like, are we doing some like, Sonic 06 stuff where Sonic is defeated or whatever, and now all the friends come together and save Sonic? That would be really no, they just held hands, and
the power
Sonic
of
is back.
friendship.
That's why I was like, oh, the DLC might be what happens in between there to save him, like if they go back into cyberspace.
That was supposed to be in the game,
right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I'm like, there's something missing here. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, that was super lame. And similar, the ending I felt was lame. And this is a crackpot theory that I'm just throwing out here. You got the 4 Titans, and you have Sonic and the 4 major other characters, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Sage is controlling one of the Titans at the end. I bet you the original ending was something along the lines of like each of the friends was going to be piloting one of the 4 Titans, and they would all be working together with Super Sonic to fight the end.
Possibly, yeah, that'd be interesting. That'd certainly be interesting.
Because they show in the flashbacks, there's those 4 pilots, the ancients that are fighting the end. And I feel like that was like setting up for like, it's going to happen again. But this time, it's going to work because Sonic.
Yeah, as opposed to just Sage piloting one of them with Super Sonic.
Yeah.
Not a bad theory. I like it.
Yeah, that would be cool. They would have definitely had to have changed them going back into cyberspace in order to revive Sonic from
a little bit differently. But, at the very least, I think that would have been a much more impactful and cooler ending, because then you could have everyone, with their character arcs of the things that they've learned throughout the game, and it would have impact at the end where they use that inner strength that they've gained to fight the end, and that would have been,
their
cool
motivation for like continuing on in life, which is what they've been talking about this entire thing, like, I'm gonna do this after this, I'm gonna do this after this, I'm gonna do this after this. Well,
exactly.
Having the actual motivations to beat,
instead of the epilogue, you do that during the final battle.
Yeah, like that's the motivation to push you through and like help defeat this this force of nature that's saying you can't live anymore, nothing matters, whatever. That strength to move forward would have been way stronger, resonating than whatever the hell they did. It really sucks that we got what we got.
Yeah.
But, yeah. It's a bummer.
Yep, it really is.
And then, as far as Sage goes, because I guess we can, we're talking about the ending anyway, I don't like... I didn't mind the sacrifice, right? I feel like that was important to her character. Again, we all agree that her character arc should have been executed better, but I think that like what they went with there with her sacrificing herself was fine. It was good. I hate the post-credit scene where Eggman brings her back. I fucking hate it. I don't get it. I don't know why you would do that. Right after this, like, this is supposed to be emotionally resonant in some sort of way. And then
look, if a Sonic character dies, you have to immediately bring them back. They established that with Shadow. That's the rule.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They can't stay dead.
At least do it the next game. Like, oh man, like I am of the belief that even though I like Shadow's character development at like the end of Shadow the Hedgehog and into 06, that he probably should have stayed dead, because I felt like he was written best in SA2.
It was definitely the intention of his character, and yeah, Sage, it feels like that was supposed to be what they did. Like, she would be a one-time character, but I guess not.
Yeah.
And maybe there'd be something in the DLC. Who knows?
I just like... But at the same time, it kind of... It's almost... It's a double-edged sword, because I'm also kind of excited to see if they're going to do anything with what they established with Eggman and Sage in this game, where it's like, are we seeing some, like, the same thing Jeld Robotnik did, and, like, going to these extents to bring his granddaughter back and save life, that he's making deals with the devil to do so, and then goes extremely mad and does all this stuff, in the same way that Eggman is hacking back into this technology and possibly bringing back what Sonic just defeated to get the one family member he ever had.
Oh yeah, they're definitely teasing that kind of thing, because it's like an ominous Sage is back. So it's going to be like Eggman obsessing over wanting his daughter or something along those lines.
Yeah, because he never had that before. So now he's risking it. At least that's how I interpret it, or the way that I hope, if they're going to do it, I hope they do it in that way. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, he's willing to bring back the thing that will end everything just to have this one connection.
And that could be pretty good. You could have a nice character arc of, like, learning to accept losing someone for Eggman at the end of the next game or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't have too much faith, but I hope that's what they end up going with.
By the way, the symbol that they showed in the initial tease of the game, that they're like, you'll know what it is when you play the game, and it shows up on the monitor. Yeah, that. Do you guys know what that is? Because I still don't really understand what that means.
Nope, we see it like shown in the sky a couple times in cutscenes, and that's about it.
Nope,
I was told I would know what that was after I beat the game. I don't.
Yeah.
You gotta play the DLC. I don't fucking know at this point.
Whether it's the DLC or the following game or something like that. I don't think you're
in the comments.
Yeah.
What you think it is. Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that's supposed to be. I don't know if it's just supposed to symbolize something in the game, or just the ancients, like their stamp, because it's on their technology. It's like, you know, it's like above the Master Emerald Shrine thing. When you climb a tower, if you look up at the ceiling, it's above there. It shows up in the sky after connecting to the memories of the ancients, like almost like they're putting their stamp on it. Like we did this is us. So it makes me think
it's brand name.
Yeah, it's just their brands, like they're signing off like, yeah, this is us. I mean, I don't know what else to interpret from it, unless it's like
that simple. They like made a big deal out of it.
Yeah. I don't know if it could just symbolize like whatever the hell the game is saying it's about, and maybe that'll come into play in the DLC or the next game, which, I mean, hope, you know, it could mean something like hope, or yeah, that's all I could really think of, right? Or like chaos versus the control that no, I don't know, man. It's one of those things. I
just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, totally. Good thing you did, because I completely forgot about it.
Forgotten about it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that settles it for story, right? Do you guys have anything else to add when it comes to this? I mean, that was a lot. So
I mean, I said it before, but Tsundere Eggman, best part of the story.
he's like, "Fine, you can be part of the Eggman." That did make me chuckle, like saying that he can be part of the Eggman Empire and stuff like that.
Scene quite a bit.
Yeah, I did too.
I guess I'm good for story.
Okay, cool. So the only things remaining to talk about is like a couple bonus topics, which is favorite music, and then what we think the future of Sonic is going to look like. Which, you know, so what are you guys' favorite songs? Do you know any of them off the top of your head?
I don't know the names of them. I'd like the one song that I remember just absolutely loving, which it just goes back to the Wyvern fight. Like that entire thing for me was like amazing. The music from it, like I still listen to it every once in a while. Just can't think of the name of the track right now.
Me neither. I think "Find Your Flame" is the night one that I like. I could be wrong, but I really like
"Break Through It All." That's what it is.
Okay, I like all of the Supersonic boss fight songs. So, and then
I like those songs too. They didn't like super resonate with me. I've been seeing a bunch of people going nuts over those songs. I'm like, they're good. That's all I really have to say.
I was so surprised to hear the voice that I was hearing in a Sonic game. And then also just listening to metalcore while I'm smashing up a Titan as Supersonic just feels good to me. So, though it was a huge tone shift just because you went from all this very solemn, depressing, ambient music throughout the islands, and then it's like, and I'm like, oh my god, what is going on now? So I think that's probably why it has such an emotional, or why it resonates so hard with people. Maybe I do like the songs a lot. I think they're good set pieces, and I would listen to a lot of them outside of the game itself. So, and then
the one song I really liked a lot was "One Way Dream." The credits song by Nate Wants to Battle. That one, I really like that song itself, and the message behind it, I think, is very nice.
I actually don't remember the lyrics to it to know the message behind it. I remember liking it in the moment, but I haven't listened to it since.
It's you should look at the lyrics. I saw a thing that in an interview or something, or maybe on Twitter, it was said that it's a message from Sonic Team directly to the fans. And it's very nice.
Okay. I'll have to go read that then. Yeah, that'll be really nice. I liked Dear Father, or whatever the first credit song was. The one from Sage's perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that one. Even though I keep saying it, like, obviously, like, some of her story was rushed and whatnot, but I think maybe it just paid off for me more than it did other people, because I happen to resonate with a lot of those themes, or I like to see that in other people, I guess. But it was cool to see, and that's why I also didn't want to see Eggman bring her back at the end of the post-credits that happened right after. It kind of felt like a slap in the face to me, so I can only hope they're going in the right direction with it. And then the Cyberspace songs, 1-2 I actually really liked. 4-1 Metal Harbor, I already went over that one. Anything that was like super upbeat or whatever and just made me want to play the levels, I enjoyed them. But those two stand out to me for sure.
I don't remember any of the Cyberspace ones specifically. I remember liking them. I can't think of any ones that I disliked. So
yeah, they can't. I can't remember almost any of them off the top of my head. I enjoyed them, but didn't blow me away.
Yeah, they weren't like super memorable or anything. I think there was only I think maybe it's because I played 1-2 so much. But every time I restarted the level or whatever, or I went into it, like the music made me want to actually do it. And same with 4-1. I can't think of any others though that ever made me feel that way, or at least not to the same extent. You know what I mean? And yeah, I guess that's it for music, right? I think overall the game has a pretty good soundtrack when it comes to the cyberspace levels. The vocal tracks are fantastic. The
it has very good Breath of the Wild ripoff music.
Yeah, some nice ambient noise for the overworlds. I actually would prefer. I liked Breath of the Wild's no music more than the more than what's included in Sonic Frontiers for the overworlds, for the islands personally. But yeah, and then as far as the future of Sonic goes, it's always a toss-up. I wish that I could say that I have faith in Sonic Team and in Sega, but Sega as a company, or CEOs of these of anything that puts out art in general, is always going to be, you know, business-minded, money first, and there's a lot of people to please between the shareholders and the fans and the team themselves, and making the art seems to come almost last on that list. And you see it time and time again with companies, but Sega especially has seemed to have forgotten what makes them, or what makes their fans connect with them. And that's why this game kind of felt like a breath of fresh air to me compared to everything that we're used to. But I don't know if it's going to continue. I can't say whether or not that the next game is going to be better than this. Are we going to have another 5-year development cycle, but that's like hell, like this one? Because while this game did a lot of stuff right, and it's going in the right direction in my opinion, it has so many problems that I don't know if I can really trust whatever's going to happen next unless they purely use this engine entirely to base whatever the next game is off of. And even then, I don't really know. I think we're headed in the right direction, but I will never feel secure with whatever this company puts out. So
yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I agree this was definitely a really good step in the right direction after what we've had for like the last 10-15 years. Minus like 1 or 2 games, but like yeah, it's hard to like put all of my faith in them anymore. Like after what we've gotten out of Sonic Boom and Sonic Forces, it's really hard to trust them again. I'm hopeful, but that's about it.
For me, yeah, I'm generally in a similar place where, you know, after Sonic Forces, it was like, you got to make right after that game. And this game kind of did that, but not entirely in the ways that I would have liked to see. Like, they were talking about how this game is going to, you know, set the standard for the next 10 years of Sonic, that this is like a new breed of Sonic or whatever. And they say that, but when I play the game, I see the same old stuff that we've been getting since Sonic Adventure 1, you know, lots of bugs and unpolished, you know, unfinished game that was rushed and has lots of issues, you know, story problems all over the place, lots of stuff in the gameplay that's not very good and is more detrimental to the game than it is beneficial. You know, it's just like, at this point, my faith has really waned, and I'm just like, are you ever going to get everything together and just put out a quality game without any fundamentally major issues? And I do think Frontiers is better in that regard than many of their previous games, but it's still like, we still have all these same issues. They're not as bad, but they're still here. And it's like, are we ever going to fix these problems? Because at this point, I'm starting to think the answer is no, and that is not the best thing in the world to be feeling about the future.
That's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah, people forget that these are paid products that you have to shell out money for, and that you choose which products you spend money on. So why would you choose one that, other than your emotional attachment to such, is normatively a worse product than something else you could spend that money on? And value is 100% subjective, but you can't like, you can't expect people to continue to buy your products when you're putting out stuff like, even this game has enough problems in it, in the gameplay, to... Oh, like, if this game was any worse than it is, I don't know if I would buy another Sonic game, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really... What point would there be if the next game... And this game had a 5-year development cycle. This is what we were given after all of that promise and all of that teasing, and it still has this level of issues, and then I'm just expected to believe that the next one will be better. I'm kind of sick of that, you know? This one is the step in the right direction, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and after so many games with these same kinds of problems, it's like, when do you just lose faith and say, it's not going to get better the next game? It didn't get better the next game the last 5 times, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of where I am with Pokemon as well. Where I've kind of sworn off of those games because they've just gotten so bad,
That's
in my opinion.
Thing I could get into, but
I mean, we'll eventually tackle that series on the podcast, but yeah, I think I put Sonic and Pokemon in the same boat in that area. But at least it looks like, you know, Frontiers is putting them in the right direction. Hopefully, this engine kind of does something with the next game and pushes it forward in ways that, and actually takes player feedback into account. So I don't know. I'm more hopeful than I've ever been in a long time, but not hopeful enough to be like, yes, I'm excited for the next Sonic game because it's for sure going to deliver on all the points that this game failed on. That's kind of where I'm at.
You can't have that kind of faith at this point. It's just been disproven too many times.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. So I guess that's going to conclude the podcast, right? Do you guys have any closing thoughts on Sonic Frontiers?
I guess we should just reiterate that, as we said earlier, though we have had a lot of criticism for the game, I still liked Sonic Frontiers quite a bit, actually. I would honestly probably put it up there in the upper echelon of 3D Sonic games, which mainly just comes from the fact that many of them have significant issues that are really damaging to the game, whereas this game, it has problems, but none of them are like so awful that they really ruin the game, I would say, but there are problems all over, and I'm like, this game could have been better. I see that this game could have been better, and I wish it was better, but we got what we got, and what we got, I think, is a fun game. But, you know, Sonic could be a lot more than that. Sonic could be one of the best gaming franchises out there, I think, if it was done right.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see it done right.
How about you, Rock?
I agree wholeheartedly. It was a fantastic game. Not fantastic. It was passable. It was fun. I enjoyed my time with it, but there were a lot of glaring issues that could have easily been fixed had they had more time. And I hope that they realize that they need to, you know, actually spend more time on this stuff. But after 15 plus years of them proving that they really can't do that, it's kind of hard to imagine them going anywhere else at this point. But I still love Sonic, so I'm still going to try and support it as much as I can.
All right. And yeah, while I don't know if I'm going to support it as much as I can, everything else I agree with. And at the end of the day, while the game, as we said, has a lot of flaws that we're pointing out, it's just because we care about it. And at the end of the day, I had a lot of fun playing the game, as evident by my playthrough that you can watch. I'll link it down in the description below. But yeah, that's about it. I had fun with the game, and it was the most chaotic game I think I've played in a very, very, very long time. So yeah, that's Sonic Frontiers. Next episode, I'm pretty sure we'll be doing Zelda 1. So quite the departure from this, but
oh boy.
Yeah, so that should be interesting because that'll be my first time playing Zelda 1. But yeah, other than that, Pariah, thank you so much for coming on. Rakanai, thank you for coming on. Both of their links will be in the description below if you want to check out more of their work. You know, That'd be awesome. And with all that being said, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time.